Big girl voice.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, August 1st. Mr. Clerk, would you lead us in the Pledge of the Flag?
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So for tonight, starting off 6:30, organization pledge of flag, read mail. 6:35, we have 3 topics for joint meetings with PMBC, FinCom, Library Trustees, School Committee, Parks and Recreation for building projects, and they are Fire Station, Alumni Fields, and Library. 7:40, Selectmen's preliminary goal setting for FY17, and we do expect our other 2 selectmen to be here. They're just running a little late. 8:10, 2 items under Town Administrator / Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget. The first one is police regulations. The second one is Narcissus Road tax title properties. And then finally, 8:30, minutes approval. Okay, so with that being said, I think we have one thing at least in the mail. Keith, or 2?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a notice from the Attorney General of approval of the 3 bylaws that were passed by our May 2016 annual town meeting. One of them was to rescind an old bylaw that we had regarding swimming pool fences. It's since been the building code has since made unnecessary the local bylaw, and the other 2 were stormwater bylaws that we worked on a lot over the winter and which town meeting has passed. So those new bylaws take effect upon publication, which will be in the next 2 editions of the Independent, after which they will take effect. Just as some quick updates, over the weekend, well, we had the weekend off, the legislature did not. The House and Senate were in session. On Saturday, the House overrode, among other things, the veto of a line item which had included a $50,000 earmark for public safety improvements for Littleton. And on Sunday, the Senate also unanimously overrode that, or with one dissenting vote, overrode that veto.
On that note, I know Chief of Police has been involved in this, and Mr. Asario put this amendment through to try and help our communications chief.
That is correct.
Just so everyone knows, that's only half of the process. Chief, you want to just mention, just so folks can get it out there now?
This assists in closing the loop, if you will, globally and also within the town for the UHF, VHF, both police and fire radio system that Chief Wazinski inherited when he took over as chief. So this is the last step in the last puzzle piece in the process, if you will. And we did do an upgrade already with our software immediately, which has helped somewhat. But this will close the whole loop, if you will. And we're also exploring shifting us with this funding, rather than even having a VHS system, to having just a complete closed loop UHF system. We're seeing which prices are better at this point. So,
What's the industry standard out there right now?
UHF, VHF, and in 800, it's all over the spectrum. Fire tends to be on UHF around Boston and out that way. But some of our border towns are on UHF, some are on VHF. So this will give us, global communications with everybody, and also seamless communications within our community.
And these units are programmable, so you can go back and forth, UHF?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's correct. You can actually, I think you can put in 312 channels within the system, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just other things that happened on Beacon Hill, that the legislature also approved a version of the Municipal Modernization Act. It's now ready to be signed by the governor. It includes many things Sadly, it did not include local control of liquor licenses, that the Senate version would have devolved that to the cities and towns. The House wanted to hang on to that, which is a significant source of power for them. So we will have to march up to Beacon Hill for each and every liquor license for the foreseeable future, probably. So anyway, that is, we'll be getting a lot more information out in the next several days about all that was acted upon by the legislature and what the governor signs. It was a very busy end of the legislative year this year.
Very good. All right, so that takes us to our joint meeting. Again, we've got PMBC, FinCom, Library Trustees, School Committee, Parks and Recreations, and our safety officials and others here in attendance. So again, we wanted to make sure we pulled this all together. We all got the same information. We all got our questions answered, both from an individual project standpoint, fire, alumni field, and library, but then have a more kind of holistic discussion, you know, talking about impact to taxpayers and what it really means, priorities, that kind of thing. So I think let's take the individual project approach first, and we can round out with finances.
So we've got the fire chief here and our architect, Greg Carell, and, oh, chief's in the back. Okay, do you want to lead us, or how would you like to lead the update?
Good evening.
Chief?
Hello.
So, things are progressing well. The design is moving forward with the fire station. We are currently, last week, we received the second professional estimator, cost estimate, which where the numbers have crunched down a little bit. We had an additional meeting last week where we reviewed a few, a little bit more of the programmatic portions of the building and tried to tighten up the budget a bit more. So right now, we're at 8.87, and still working on that. We have one more estimate to come in. That would be end of August? Beginning of September. And that'll be just before actually it goes out to bid. So right now, one of the issues that we're working on is finding temporary housing. We're checking out a couple different options. We may have an additional option that's a bit more affordable than doing temporary housing behind the police station, but we're still investigating that. So kind of very fluid, changing kind of by the day.
You want to walk us through your schedule? I know we're looking at a November 16th a date for special town meeting, and that I know you're
Correct.
working towards achieving that.
The November 16th, that would be obviously town meeting. Backing it up, if you, design will be done and ready to go out by the end of September, September 29th, actually. And from that point, the sub bids are due on October 18th, with the GC bids due on the 25th. That way it gives us enough time to get the exact price in the pamphlet to be sent out to the residents, so that everybody has time to absorb the number before it goes to town meeting. And, it's just a little, it'll give us plenty of time to look at a firm number for that.
That's great to see, because I know we've been talking about the importance of that deadline, that if the voters get voter information from the town, which they'll have in their hands 2 weeks before town meeting, we want to make sure that we have what the dollar figures are for the project. So appreciate this.
As of now, we're tracking at 8.8.
Correct.
And just one quick question, actually, for PMBC, just a little bit off topic. Do you guys have a quorum? Do you have everyone you need on PMBC?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you have a quorum For PMBC, just checking who's out there.
No.
No? Okay.
3 of us here.
3?
Yeah, 3's a quorum,
Three's a
right?
quorum.
There's only 5 on the board, right?
Yeah.
Yes, 3 members here.
Okay, you should be good. Okay, cool, great, thank you. Okay.
FinCom's got enough of it.
Yeah, FinCom, no, we got 2.
Oh, no.
Okay.
We'll have to still hear from you.
Well, any questions from the board, first of all?
Not relative to the project specific, but to the financing aspect
Yeah.
of it. I know it's a little open-ended. The last time
Oh, yeah.
a version of this board had voted, it was a few years ago, was in favor of complete funding under the levy limit with identified debt coming off the books. Finance Committee in a similar time period had voted an opposite recommendation, and that's been a long time since we addressed that, but I think the picture has become even clearer that we're able to do that, but I wondered whether Bonnie or somebody might speak to that, and then if the board, wanted to, I don't know whether we do it now or sooner rather than later, get into a discussion of that, just so we put that to rest.
Yep.
But we're doing it one way or the other this fall, and it'd be good to know whether we're doing it with, within the levy limit or outside of it.
The plan at this point was to pay for the debt service inside the levy limit. Whether there was a vote taken to secure a debt exclusion or not, the plan was to try and fund this with retired debt savings that we've been accumulating for a number of years. And just to give you an example of the impact, currently, the 2004 threshold.
The current debt that's expiring is shown in green and
stuff,
red.
right? Yeah.
And it's the blue that, in this illustration, shows what the impact of a $9 million. These are updated numbers that Bonnie did today, of showing the impact of a $9 million fire station. It also shows what the impact is of a $4 to $6 million
But nothing,
library, which we'll
nothing
get
for a
to.
senior center, though.
No,
No,
nothing.
right.
There's no senior, we're not assuming borrowing for alumni field. I mean, there's a lot of other things, but at least in terms of what the baseline would be, that the blue, which, maybe we should have picked red for fire station, but that there's enough, with the retiring debt, the combination of red and green, there's enough to take on additional debt and stay at about a $2.5 million annual cost. Anything, when the debt service, for any reason, gets above $2.5 million, then we're going into uncharted territory.
But which is an important point to bring out here. That's very helpful in showing where the numbers are, but it doesn't establish what the determined priorities are.
Correct.
No, it doesn't.
So basically, what we're doing is we're sliding in this debt service in place of the Shaker Lane and the high school debt, which will essentially be retired in 2023. The impact to the municipal finances is really to the capital plan. What we do right now with this retired debt service is we use it for capital planning. Currently, in this past fiscal year, it's about $1.4 million that we use for capital plan. In 2020, the plan was to reduce the amount from $1.4 million to some $700,000 to be used on capital recurring, and combine that with the free cash that we normally use too. But there would be an impact to the capital plan at that point, and that was something that was discussed, a few years ago. With the debt service being increased a little bit with the cost of the building, it's probably going to go down to about $600,000 instead of $700,000. So there is an impact for the increased cost, but it's still manageable within the debt service budget that we have. It doesn't, with the blue, it does not go above the 2014 level, which was defined as the threshold for pain. That's kind of when everything kind of came on board with the police station and all the other debt that we had accumulated, so.
And we sort of view that 2.5 million figure as sort of it's the pocketbook impact, because when the voters get a tax bill, there's nothing in the tax bill that indicates what debt was excluded and non-excluded. That's more of a policy issue for how we do the financing. But when they get the bill, it's if the total of that is debt service is greater than 2.5 million, then that will necessarily result in an increase in the pocketbook impact.
Assuming
unless
that an
you-
accompanying
unless you-
override vote. Right? I mean, it isn't gonna happen
I hope-
automatically.
Well, I hope so.
Right, right, I'm just saying that needs.
Because if it happens without an override, then we have to cut operating budget.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
That's above the 2.5.
Above the 2.5 is the threshold for pain.
And that, is that a static number, or does that grow significantly as our overall budget grows? I know it should grow by some percentage.
Yeah, the policy, I think, says 10%, no more than 10%
Okay.
can be used.
And
for
our
debt.
budgets
So-
grow from year to year, roughly about what, 5%?
Yeah.
Okay,
So there could be some upward,
right. So it's 10% of 5% roughly annually, right? Yeah, compounded,
That's it.
or 5%.
Why isn't alumni field showed on this? Because that's also an impact of the capital plan.
Right.
So I think
you
that,
can show borrowing of whatever the number is. With the only number we have right now is 2.35 million, and they're in the process of developing, if there's some other number, the OPM was just hired tonight for the alumni field project, but
And we'll get into discussion with that, if I may, Madam Chair. Chuck is the chair of that, so, you know, I don't want to get into discussion. I understand you're looking at this chart, but
And you understand where I'm going, okay?
Yeah.
The plan isn't just, these are the options. Alumni field is part of this discussion of where we spend our money. Okay.
In fairness to whoever put this together, these were the only hard numbers that we had, but that doesn't mean they're the only projects that are on the table.
any other comments from FinCom maybe on fire station or PNBC or anybody?
Just one clarification based on what Bonnie just said. Could you put that chart
Yeah.
back up just real quick? It sounded like the, sort of the goal was to have the total of debt service plus capital to be about, if I added the two numbers together, about $3 million. And then when you're talking about the impact of one going up and the other going down, is that how I kind of read what you were saying there, or?
That's not reflected in this chart, this is just the debt service payments in this chart. So the capital plan will have an impact in fiscal 2020 by way of being reduced. Because we take that retired debt service that is not used in our operating budget and fund capital items, so equipment and
Right.
other such.
Is that based on the $2.5 million, or?
The 2.5 for, oh,
Your sliding number in terms
Yep.
of where the impact comes from. So if you drew a line across, at which point does it start impacting the available funds for capital? Is it at the 2.5 million mark? Is it at the 2.7, which is kind of where we're at now, or is it
It's-
closer to the 3? I'm just trying to get a better handle on what.
yeah,
you-
it's the 2.5, it's at the 2.5 level.
Okay, so everything above 2.5 starts impacting what we have for capital.
Right.
That's what I just wanted to get a kind of
At the
crisp.
2014 level. So right now, we're spending higher than the 2014 level because as that
Yep.
debt service drops down, we're using it for capital.
Right.
So we'll end up resetting back to the 2014 level, which was 700,000 in available funds for that capital plan. A lot of work in parts.
Bonnie, when you say it will impact capital, does that include the new monies we've been putting together for maintenance every year now?
It will impact anything in the capital plan, yes. I mean, it's just the money for the PMBC maintenance program.
Yeah.
Yes, it will impact anything that's capital. So choices will need to be made over whether the money that is available is spent on the PMBC facilities project or equipment or, anything else that might come up. So, but the available funding, right now, we have a total available funding for capital at about 2.5 million a year. About half of that comes from undesignated fund balance or free cash, and the other half comes from what's been accumulated inside the levy. So from the $1.4 million that's accumulated inside the levy, it will go down by 700,000 to fund this. So you will carve 700,000 out of the capital spending.
So we have more assets, but we have less money to maintain, which is a problem we got into before. We really want to keep an eye on that. It's a very big concern for FinCom.
'Cause we-
The newer assets
we've
though
made
come
great
with warranties and come with all new stuff, so, you know, that
Does
maintenance
that have played out at the high
piece.
school, though?
That maintenance, excuse me?
Not so much.
Excuse me?
Did that play out at the high school?
Since 2001, since 2001 when it was built, we are having issues now 15 years later. You're correct.
Okay.
So, yeah, 15 years is a shelf life for some of the mechanicals and things in the high school. So 15 years from now, we may have to do some maintenance on the building. So, if I may? So Chief, we have the luxury of seeing nice pictures here. Has anything changed? I know you've had all your public input and different sessions with your neighbors, and you've had it on LCTV. Has anything really changed with the footprint, the building, or anything to that nature?
No. Right now, everything that you see, the floor plan, the appearance on the outside has relatively stayed the same. There's been a few adjustments on the interior, just for operational needs. Exterior looks the same. It's everything that is seen from the street will be clad in brick. It's still going on the same appearance that we've been presenting all along.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then we just arrived, but were you think of any fire station questions or comments? Yeah, go for it, Jeff.
On your, you should have asked it before, the meeting and training room, how big is that? How many people would it seat for a meeting?
We made a few adjustments in there for seating and direction. I believe it'll seat 48.
So it's about the same size as the PD?
Smaller than the PD, yeah. A little bit smaller in this room. Yeah.
That'll accommodate the whole department though for training and that kind of?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Sanders?
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I don't want to just gloss over these numbers here, but when it came up about the fire station, they said that they adjust the time on going in with this based on, I believe it was the high school debt was going to be retired, and they were going to use that money to put the fire station in. I want to know, for taxpayers concerned here, are we still talking about that money is going to take care of the fire station, or are we as taxpayers looking at an increase in tax once this fire station come on board?
I think that goes back to your point, Ms. Stigley.
The plan is not, that this, and if, I don't know, if I can bring that up again.
If not, I don't have
Yeah.
a concern about it.
Yeah, we'll just show you the debt that's coming off the books, and you can see that's the delta that is giving us the opportunity to do fire station, field, library, senior center, whatever.
You can,
All that's the shrinking green number, right, and the, or red number.
yeah,
Is that
the
right?
red and the green.
Red and the green, as that's getting smaller, that's what's giving us the space to pick up the debt.
Okay.
The
New debt.
The red is the non-excluded debt, the green is the excluded debt. It's being paid down. The red, I'm sorry, the blue in this illustration shows what the impact of $9 million for a fire station would do to that total debt. And then and then the purple above that shows what the library project would do brought on at the time that the trustees are looking for. Yeah, alumni field would be borrowing. If the source is borrowing, that would be to, that would be even further, and in fact, would be coming online. 2020 would be quite a year.
Well, that presumes, you know,
If you
some
bring them on
priority
all,
decisions.
right, if you bring them on all on at the same time.
I have a question for Bonnie, if I could. Does this then reflect the money that's in the capital stabilization fund being used for this?
No, it does not.
It does not.
It does not.
So we're assuming that's going to the alumni field.
We haven't made any assumptions.
Okay, but that's not part of this chart.
It's not part of this.
Madam Chair.
The fund balance of 2.5 million that's in capital stabilization is not, this proposal, this plan, this illustration does not show any of that being used to spend down on any of that.
Any one of the funding mechanisms for any of these projects.
Completely undesignated at this point.
Right.
Mr. Sanders?
Madam Chair, just one other question here. As a taxpayer, I'm a little bit concerned. We ain't got the fire station up and off and running. And here we're talking about here in the library, coming on board here. I don't care if we are gonna be able to submit and go to the state and get money, possible get money to pay for 50% of it, because I'm gonna write the government, tell them that I think they ought to dispose of that funding for the library, because the fact is that I don't think we need a library. Maybe we need some renovation and some cosmetics done to it, but my opinion, in my opinion only here, that with the technology we have today, there's not too many people going to the library in the first place. Well, you can say, you can say listen, you can say what you want to. You live in a free country here, you can speak your piece as to what you want to. I'm speaking mine right now as to how I see it. And that's the way I see it. I don't care about what somebody else think about it. That's my opinion, and I have the right to voice that opinion at this meeting here to tell you what I think. There are a lot of things that we probably need in this town. We need to do something for the seniors here. Not only talking about a center, but we're talking about them being able to remain in their homes.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody have a right here, so let's don't get all hot to hot here, because you're barking at the wrong person here.
And I do think that's where FinCom is, coming as well. How do we look at the grand scheme of things, add them all together and see how we can truly accomplish them and in what priority? Okay, yeah.
My name is Nancy Bruns, and I am now a resident of Air, but I still come back to the library.
Library's not up.
And
We're talking about the fire station.
That is true. The library is too.
I'm kind of, I'm sorry, I'm editorialing here, but I just wanted to, I want to thank the librarians, the people who work in the library, for all of the hard work that they do. So keep them funded.
Thank you for that. And we do have the library in just two topics from now, one topic from now.
I'm Mark Rambacher, 205 Hartwell Avenue. I just have a quick question on the fire station. Regardless of how it's funded, is the intent that it's going out to, in addition to town meeting vote, that it's going to the ballot as well for a normal override procedure? Whether or not it's actually funded through an override or through the levy limit, are we going to put it out to ballot?
I don't know.
Financial policy say we are.
Okay, financial policy says we do.
I think the financial policy say, unless there's a alternative plan, which is what, specifically what we have on the table. And, I was hoping we would get into this discussion tonight.
We do.
I think that's foolish.
We don't have a quorum here.
You're gonna be telling the town, in the scenario where you put it out there, that, we intend to fund it without an override, but we're gonna ask you to vote a tax override anyway. In which case, we run the possibility, and that's theoretical, of going down the road of what either the town of Chelmsford did, where they indicated that they were gonna fund it under the levy limit, had a override and lost, if I'm not mistaken, on a fire station. Then you had the town of Groton, which voted an override they didn't use, and then since the funds were available, they used them to cover another shortfall that came up a couple of years later, which it didn't go over too well with the taxpayers. So I think you run the risk of having people that would support the fire station vote against it, because why would they be voting for a tax increase that they're being told isn't going to be used, and why are we asking for one? So I really can't understand the argument of having a ballot question, because it can only be phrased to ask for a tax increase when we knowingly don't need one or want one.
The argument for it is to open it up to more residents that could possibly make the town meeting. Right, a town meeting is a very selective audience versus everyone.
But by that logic, we ought to put everything out for an override vote, so then everybody gets to vote it on the ballot.
I'm fine with that too.
Okay, well, fortunately, state law doesn't encourage that. We have a different form of government.
But it just seems that you might give that some thought when we're talking about a $9 million item. And anybody who is amenable to a new fire station probably is not going to vote against it just because it's going to raise their taxes.
And should their votes be interpreted as being in favor of tax increase because they voted for it?
I don't see the corollary there, I'm sorry.
Well, you're asking the question, should we raise our taxes? And if they say yes, I would take that as it's an override.
Well, you may do that, I may not. I just think if you're talking about $9 million item, it's good to have everybody on board.
I guess I would like to maybe see the sort of the layout of the various projects and then a proposed funding plan before we
Yeah.
really talk about all the pros and cons of each one. Maybe have a recommendation or at least a preliminary plan from the selectmen as to what the funding mechanisms would be, and then open the debate up as to whether that's the best one or not. I think speculating on funding options is
It's not
gonna
speculative.
help.
We've had a specific proposal before. It just probably needs to be updated, Bonnie, is that correct?
That's what I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know, right now, I think there's speculation as to what project's gonna be funded under what mechanism, rather maybe just have the discussion about what projects we're gonna go forward with, and then have a proposed funding plan placed so that we can just debate that, rather than the speculation as to which
Right,
mechanism
well,
will be
I'm
used.
all for that, Darrell. I'm just putting it out on the table where, you know, where I'm coming from. We trust the voters at town meeting to approve a $30 million budget, but we're not gonna trust them to approve a $9 million borrowing article? I don't get the logic to that.
But just, part of it is, I think there's two issues here. One of them, which we haven't talked about yet, is timing, which gets to the matter of priorities, because as not only the current debt is paid down, but any new debt is paid down, then after one project gets paid down, you can afford to take on another project and still stay within your limit. If you're not going to do that, if you're not willing to wait for all the projects, then you get into the matter of talking about since we can't, I would boldly say, we can't do all that we want to do and do it within the levy limit. So you have to choose that which you can do within the levy limit and that which you can't. And what you can't, could only be authorized if you go to a debt exclusion ballot question. Because if we could deliver on, just for our discussion purposes, a debt service totaling 2.5 million, what do you do when you get closer to 3 million? That needs to come from somewhere.
Absolutely, that's the whole point of having a plan.
Yeah.
And who's first in line is not necessarily as important as what's the biggest need.
Okay, I think that's a good point. So, any more particular questions on fire station?
Just as in this.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, so let's take the next individual item, and we can round back maybe on that last conversation after library, and that is alumni fields. So, I don't know how you guys want to go through this, or who's going to be taking the lead. That's just an update.
PMBC is here. I know that Joe Calentro is here as chair. The PMBC voted tonight to award the contract for the owner's project manager for Alumni Field.
Well, can we have them come up and?
Yeah, Joe, you want to come up?
Bob.
Bob? Rich?
No, I will.
He doesn't want to, but he
Carl
will.
here?
He was here.
No, he took off.
Whatever.
Took around tonight.
Come on up, Rich.
There's no room.
Oh, yeah, there's 3 over here.
Plenty of room. Tom will slide over for you. So just by way of a quick update before we hand it over to the PMEC, the Alumni Field Renovation and Design Committee has been meeting. We've
received back to the PMBC and to Bonnie bids from 3 owner project managers and 5 designers. The owner project managers were interviewed last week. There was a recommendation made by the selection committee, which is made up of members of the PMBC and members of the AFRAC committee jointly. That recommendation went to the PMBC. They had a special meeting tonight. They took a vote from what I'm hearing, to
They voted to
negotiate.
accept it?
Yeah, we went on the committee's recommendation to select Pink as an OPM.
And we authorizing to go ahead and start negotiations.
So we'll have to get together with AFRAC and get into negotiations on that.
Perfect. So, okay,
We got to get a scope of work set up for it.
yeah.
Scope of work, okay.
So from there, once we get Pink on board as the owner project manager, the thought is that they would be a critical part of hiring the design firm as well. A lot of the vetting has been done for the design firms. All the references have been checked, so the committee is prepared to make the recommendation, but we wanted to try to include the OPM in that process because they're the ones that are going to be essentially driving the bus. So we figured it would be important for them to be part of that process.
Yeah, Pink is strictly an OPM company. They don't do construction management or anything like that. It's their OPMs.
That
Okay.
is their specialty.
And I know one of the questions going into this whole thing was what would be included? What is in the scope? Is it just the field? Is it the sidewalks? Is it the snack stand? You know, what all is included? And there's quite a list here, but I don't know if we want to do some highlights, but it's a comprehensive plan, it looks like, to address many different aspects, including bleachers, the playing surface.
Yeah, so that's straight from the RFQ
Perfect.
to the design firms. It lists out what the design requirements are, and rather than reading them off, essentially what the requirements are is to renovate Alumni Field, to incorporate certainly a new playing surface, the seating, so new bleachers, new press box, bleachers, the whole facility would be upgraded to be ADA compliant, new concession area, new ticketing area, and pathways on the campus, or within the fences, if you will, and if feasible, probably as add alternates, if we are able to do it, incorporate the outer facility, so the infrastructure, which would be pathways outside of the facility, parking, which would potentially net us additional parking. So the core of the project is to upgrade the alumni facility within the fence, and then to try to incorporate those other amenities or additions and renovations outside of the fence.
Does this include doing something in the softball field?
Joe, that hasn't been determined. When the design came back, the concept design came back from Mr. Reardon, the softball field was not included to maximize the footprint for the rectangular sports, if I can call them that. If that is the case, then we would need to include a plan for jet field or for a softball field. We've expressed with the OPMs in their interviews, some of them asked about that. Because that's not specifically drawn out that we want to remove jet field. It's just, we want to maximize the space to get as many events on that surface as possible. So it's more of a community event, a community location, community venue. If in fact the designers are able to design that facility with jet field intact, that would be the least expensive, the probably easiest renovation for us to do. But keeping in mind that that may not be the most feasible for us to do. So we're not sure yet. We're not the designers. Ideally,
I guess my case is I don't want to see it being eliminated, so I don't want to go through the whole process, then when it's all done, there's no field.
so the net will not be that there's one less softball field, if that's what your question is.
My question is, I want to make sure the field isn't eliminated from that area.
Okay.
The
as Chuck will say, when we had the OPMs in the other night, the two that we were really interested in both discussed the jet field and the able to keep the field there and having to take the field away too. And it was, so the OPMs they know that we want the field to stay if we can do it. But they also said that in the whole scheme of things, the field might end up going, which.
Well, that's my concern. I'll tell you right now, that I'll fight against the whole thing if you're gonna eliminate a field.
That's why I say they discussed it both ways, with the field and without the field. And it all depends upon how far you expand out the footprint of your field that's right there right now.
If I can, the design that Sean put forward, Mr. Reardon put forward, had the concession stand down in that end zone,
Yep.
behind that end zone, which created, it took away too much of jet field, which is why he said, well, we'll eliminate jet and we'll create like a queuing area and be able to funnel more traffic off of that pathway in the driveway by the middle school. So his design saw it as moving that field over to the other side of the middle school. There's the possibility that that whole the rectangular field could shift back towards the Russell Street School potentially and keep jet field intact where it is. But the net would be that the town would not lose a softball field in order to have this project go forward. It's not the intention. So if in fact it's determined that the renovation will include jet field being relocated, that's a possibility, Joe.
I just want to make sure we don't lose it. I know.
I know, you
I'm
told
not
me.
talking about the same location, but I mean, the only reason I brought it up again was I hear about the walkways going through. I hear, there's nothing in this thing that says anything about it, so that's.
So there's not been a design yet, Joe, that we haven't gotten a design yet. We've got the concept design from Mr. Reardon, and that's all we have. So that's kind of a pie in the sky drawing that was a $3.7 million project if we went forward with the drawing that he presented, with jet being moved over to the other side of the middle school. Similarly to if the library were to go out on top of the tennis courts, it's been talked about that new tennis courts would have to be located somewhere. Because we can't just eliminate one venue to create room for another venue.
Okay.
So, same argument.
Okay. Okay, so next steps are statement of work, getting that together.
We've got to get back together with the selection committee now to go further with it.
So we've got a meeting tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow night, Wednesday night. I don't know, they all have.
Like, you guys might have a meeting, we get a meeting on Wednesday night. PMDC's got a meeting.
So is maintenance gonna come up kind of towards design?
Anybody that designs the playing surface, that's where most of the discussion has been
Yeah.
around the maintenance. Anybody, whether it's been synthetic or natural, has said that maintenance is always incorporated into the whole project. So, and that it would be incumbent upon us to make sure that we executed upon that. That would be built-in warranties, and this is what you need to do in order to keep the warranty in place. So there'll be a maintenance plan incorporated into whatever renovation we present to the town.
Okay, perfect.
Chuck Cowell was going to notify Pink that they've been awarded the contract. We just have to do a contract with them, yeah.
Negotiate the contract, okay.
And in terms of cost and funding, I mean, until we have the design, you don't know for sure, but right now, we've got a 2.5 million estimate, so if that's this point, if we were to put it on, it'd be a bar on that chart at 2.5, right now, as of today.
It would be, the board would have to take a position on how what our strategy would be, or what our mechanism would be in order to fund
Yeah.
the renovations.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Some questions?
Mr. Bellini?
Mr. Smith?
Yeah. 2 points. One, we determined actually at town meeting when Finance Committee voted to support this, that there were 3 items we wanted to see accomplished in conjunction with this process. And then very early on, we also made it very clear that it was not the mission of the AFRAC committee to do that, and that's to look at the global picture of fields beyond Alumni Field. And I think we were talking in terms of hoping to achieve 3 goals that we could put on the table at the same time in the fall when we're putting the field forward. Now, a couple of those would just be, if I remember them correctly, and Al or Betsy chime in if I forget something, is one is that, difficulties that were expressed that we hope to address were people's ability to extract out and look at fields in the budget document so that they were clear. 2 was providing for maintenance. It's great that, I'm impressed that you're providing for that in the Alumni Field, but we need them for the global picture. And the other one is working with the schools, Park and Rec, to look at what all our other fields needs are, because, we've heard a million horror stories about, lacrosse fields, and, you name it. And, Joe's probably looking out for dwindling, amount of softball, baseball fields too. So somehow between now and when we put this project on the table in the next couple of months, I think we ought to, have a little working group or something that can make a similar report at town meeting that here's our bigger picture plan.
Yeah. The one other thing I would add to that, because thanks you for bringing those up, is that it's the bigger picture of the ownership of this.
Right.
Because we have this MOU, but it's very tactical. This, the highway department does this and Park and Rec does that, but in terms of who's responsible, who owns this whole thing, and budget to go with it, because,
It served its
budget
purpose at the
always
time, but
drives it.
yeah.
So we really have to, these are gonna be big assets now, and we really wanna make sure we're managing them well and have it clear.
Yeah.
So we know how to get things
Yeah,
done.
when 3 different
So-
people owned it, nobody owned it. That's-
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make some concrete next steps to have that conversation then. I guess,
So that's not necessarily
Sorry.
relative to
Nope.
alumni,
That's
but I
true.
Nope.
definitely
Yeah.
think we should.
Parallel
I'm-
track.
Okay,
Yeah,
good
but
point.
I think that's a good, it's not a bad time for us to start marching down that road.
for sure.
Do
That certainly is.
the obvious solution, appoint a, subcommittee of the various, one member from all the interested boards, and
I think before we get to that piece, though, I think we should do Park and Rec and School Committee and us.
sure, well, I guess
You know,
that's who I was
you know, that's-
anticipating, and FinCom
That's
too.
in FinCom, and let's talk about, that would be us, I think. Talk about what the objective is, and if
Right.
there is some type of committee, let's get their input on it too, but it's not a bad idea, we've been talking about it, let's make it a goal, you know? But as far as Alumni Field, Chuck, I know you've been meeting regularly. Have you how's the turnout been from the public? What are you hearing from the public in regards to alumni?
In the beginning, there was, the public, they were well attended. A lot of folks coming, it's the last couple of weeks with vacations and whatnot, there have been fewer people in the audience. And it's been a pretty open discussion. Folks have been able to be heard, and you look at it, handicap it, like, is there a lot of
No,
support?
I
for
just
it?
want to know, at town meeting, it was well attended. I'm just wondering if you're seeing that same type of interest going through. It's summertime, it's tough for
Yeah, it
folks to
is.
get out. So I just want to, let folks know that, hey, not only are they on LCTV, they're televised, so you can always go back and take a look, but, what the input of the folks have been. Anything major changes, I think with the crumb rubber question being answered at town meeting, has there been any other design change than what we saw in town meeting?
No, one of the other members in the back of the room, Mike Prue, I don't think of anything that's really, any red herrings or any red
Right.
flags or anything that have,
we spent the majority of the time talking to stakeholders. To Chuck's point earlier, we haven't designed anything yet, so
Right.
there's nothing to change.
Okay.
and we won't be designing anything. That's what we're hiring the smartest guy in the room for.
Very good.
And I have not attended, but the reports that I've gotten have been that it has been a very open discussion, and that people, some people thought it would go in, and it was really gonna be, this is already decided, we're gonna talk. But they have felt that's been very open, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Yes. Hi, Sarah Rambacher, 205 Hartwell.
I was just curious, since funding is definitely an issue tonight, we've been talking about it, has any other mechanism for helping to fund Alumni Field been explored? Grants, private funding, CPC funds, anything like that that could help out?
I mean, I can jump, you want to jump into it, you want me to jump in?
Go right ahead.
So we have looked into other grants through the NFL, through American Youth Football. CPC funds are limited on what we can do with it. We could potentially do part of the facility, but we can't do the actual, if we decide to go synthetic, we wouldn't be able to use CPC funds for the turf field.
For grass, you could.
I think so. I think it would pass muster. Many of the other grants came up earlier in the year. The applications were awarded, the grants were awarded in April. So it was kind of a timing thing. So we do have some folks on the committee that are looking into other mechanisms. Most of those would likely be for pieces of the project. So I mentioned alt ads earlier, and so some of those funding sources may be so that we can go forward and do the renovation and then almost do like a phased approach, Sarah, where we can pay for the concession stand. I'm just throwing this out there. This isn't part of the plan, but we can pay for the concession stand with this $50,000 grant from American Youth Football or something like that. So we could leave that off of our plan, would have that $50,000 to be able to use for the infrastructure repairs and upgrades and things like that. So, quick answer is yes, we have looked at any number of funding sources. Many of the grants that folks have either posted on Facebook or chatted about around town are not available to our community, basically because of demographics. They're used in more urban communities, and we don't qualify for them. So we've investigated a lot of those, and we just don't qualify for them.
If the grant, often there are federal grants, community development block grant or others, that it's the community's eligibility depends on what the, how many low and moderate income households there are, what the percentages, and when you look at what demographic you need in order to qualify for funding, is it a problem? We make too much, so we're not eligible. Community Preservation Act funds is something that I think most of this project in any form would be eligible for. The problem then becomes, because we could put up, I had it tonight, a separate chart that shows community preservation funds, the many proposals that we have on how to use them, include, every $1 million that we need for, acquisition of open space or something else is in competition with a project like this. And I think Bonnie has said we can probably swing one project. We can swing one building, one project, and then we're just gonna, one CPC project, and then we're tapped out for a while, so.
In also the aforementioned capital stabilization fund too, that, that we're just starting to build it up, so we shouldn't be in a race to empty it, but that, we don't have a full plan for that either, and the balance is in the neighborhood of what, 2.5 million? Is that what we?
Yes, yeah, a little over, yeah.
So is this, what number is being put on the debt projection that we just talked about? It seems like there's a lot of variance here is what we're discussing, where the development isn't even completed yet. There's still all this discussion. What number is going to show up on that chart we saw previously? Are we highballing there?
Or any,
just for alumni?
There's no number, there's no
right,
number.
But it's going to be, correct?
Yeah, I heard two numbers.
Right, that's what I mean. I
heard a 2.5 million as a base number that were, as a placeholder, but I think Mr. DeCoste, you said something of like 3.87.
Okay, Levy, I know I shouldn't have said that number.
I didn't forget that.
Yeah, I know you did. You wrote it down. I saw you eyeballing me after I said it. So, if anybody sits here, there's a leg right there, so be careful. So the tears in my eyes are from the leg of the chair, Ellen, not from your comments. The 3.6 number was the pie in the sky number that Mr. Reardon put forward with the piers, the brick piers and the aluminum/wrought iron gates and fencing all the way around the facility with all the parking, granite curbing all the way around the facility. Pavers instead of bituminous, it was a high end. So that's what he delivered when he delivered those boards to us and presented to us.
I
So
figured
that was
that's
the
where that number
3.6
came
number.
from.
When we brought this forward at town meeting in May, we pared that back a lot, an awful lot. It went back, it pulled back all those brick piers and everything, as beautiful as they were. We went back to vinyl chain link and, pulled it back quite a bit. That's what we came up with, kind of the target number of about $2.6 million. They're 2.35, I think is the number. So the $235,000 that was approved on May 2nd was for the process that we're going through right now. To hire the designer and get the designs put together, which will have a much tighter construction number for us.
And actually bid it though, right? I mean,
Correct.
we bid it.
Right. All right, so 3.6, pie in the sky, that's not what we're looking to.
Mark that off your board there, so you don't make that mistake again.
I was trying to show that we were trying to be fiscally conservative and pull a lot of those things off. And didn't come across that way?
It came out in the explanation, though.
So I would say, just to use round numbers, about 2.5. Mr. Wilson, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Yes, Kevin Davis, Whitetail Way. Has any information that Tom Irwin presented about examining our field usage or anything like that come before the board, so that way addressing what Mr. Glavy had talked about, looking at a town from a holistic point of view or something like that?
Can I address that? So Mr. Irwin, actually not Mr. Irwin, he's been dead for a long time, but Tom Irwin Incorporated is a firm that we brought in to do a presentation to us, primarily on, we had thought that he was going to come in and kind of do a comparison between turf and synthetic and natural turf. Their firm is 99% natural turf, got a great presentation on what's needed in order to have turf as a playing surface. It was recorded on LCTV, so if anybody wants to watch the presentation, it's out there. Ian Gold, was it? Lacey. Ian Lacey is the gentleman from Irwin. He's a partner in the business. He did a presentation, and he felt as though it was worthwhile for us to spend money to do a feasibility study. About $15,000 to do a feasibility study on our fields. Well, actually, he said specifically just on Alumni Field. The question was asked of him specifically, so that question, I think, answers Mr. Davis's question, sort of. But that hasn't been presented to this board because what he was looking for is, what he was hoping to do is get in further so that we could look at all the fields. And he and I had those conversations, and I think I mentioned that at that meeting. We had those conversations, and I think that would be beneficial when we get this working group together with the Park and Rec and all the stakeholders relative to all of the fields and the full field study and feasibility. That's where I felt as though he would be most beneficial. When we asked him specifically at the meeting if we would be able to play all the sports that we'd like to play on Alumni Field and do all the things that we'd like to do on Alumni Field, would we be able to do it with grass? He didn't appreciate me asking the question, and he frankly didn't answer the question. He kind of danced around it a bit. And offline, when he and I met at Alumni Field, he said, you just can't do that. You have to assign fields. You wouldn't be able to do all those things on this field. Didn't say it on the air, but he did say it to me in person when we did the walk at Alumni Field.
Okay. I think you're right on visibility with the global picture in mind. Yep.
I did offer for him to come look at all of our fields, and he said he'd be happy to do that. But he certainly was looking to sell us his services.
Right.
To the tune of $15,000 to $20,000 for a feasibility for all the fields.
For all the fields.
Which may be money well spent, by the way. I'm not saying it's not. I
Yeah.
think he's extremely knowledgeable, and, I mean, he's the type of guy that could probably go over and pull up a piece of grass and chew on it and be able to tell you the pH level. And, I mean, this guy's lived, breathed. This is what he does. Seriously, he's done fields in Europe, FIFA. He's he's like a god in the natural turf arenas. So he's definitely a resource that we could stay in touch with and we could benefit from.
Melissa, this is really nice to hear this discussion going on, because since we, from the time that we built the middle school had one of the town's first constructed fields. I know Joe will remember this. We discussed who was going to maintain that field. Back then, that was in 2006. And really nobody came up except for Jimmy Clyde with his crew. And so that was who it was left to manage. And so all these years, Jimmy's been doing a tremendous job with these guys to try to effectively keep these fields running. But the fields, like all fields, need periodic maintenance, and that means aeration, and that means adding more
Irrigation, fertilising, yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so we couldn't get anywhere in 2006. But now it's wonderful to hear that it might be getting feet right now. That concept.
Madam Chairman, I think that's important, Richard. Appreciate you bringing it up. And it's been said countless times from Park and Rec, from this board, and from Jim, that he's got 2 people that are responsible for 63 acres, Jim, and counting? 62. I was trying to give you a little extra there. 2 people, and the consultant that came in said that in order to effectively maintain 62 acres, you would need how many people, Jim? 4 or 5? 6. See, I shot you down the other side, built you up, and then I knocked you down. So 6 people, so it's, okay. So certainly, we're trying to do as much as we can with very limited resources, and so you have to try to make sure that we take some bullets for Jim, because it's not, they're doing everything they can, and they're giving us a product that we're able to play on.
That's right.
Up until recently.
That's right. And for at least
We
10
need
years.
we need
for
to
that
address
field.
it, and we need to, maintenance is a huge thing for all the fields.
That's right.
And if there is a drought, it does horrible things to fields, so.
Yeah, on that particular,
If there's a drought.
Hypothetically.
on that particular
You get my
field.
point? It's not helpful, Jim can't be out watering all these 62 acres either, so it's
No,
not good.
on that particular field, drought-resistant grass was just coming available, and so we used a 10% or 15% drought-resistant grass on that, so it would survive a drought. But that's,
It's bad.
you need maintenance.
Yeah, it's about maintenance, yeah. You can bake that into the discussion as well, resources and impacts as well.
So, Madam Chairman, if you just, one more comment. I think looking at that 15 to 20%, $15,000 to $20,000 for a study to show what our feasibility would be is just, less than 0.5% of what the, projected 2.3 or $2.5 million would be for that field. So that would be something I would definitely see beneficial from a town's perspective, and encourage the board to act sooner than later, because that would be very good. He said in that same meeting, it would take 4 to 6 weeks, or maybe 3 to 6 weeks, I'm sorry, to get his answer back, and that would be something very good to have for going into the town meeting, because it's just data.
Yep.
Okay.
I think,
Thanks.
I don't want to get into a tit for tat, but if we're not going to go with a natural surface, to spend $15,000 to $20,000, I think would be fruitless. I do think it's important that we do it on a broader scale,
Yes.
and do a feasibility
All of
with
it, yeah.
Tom Irwin or another consulting firm
Yep.
to evaluate all of our fields.
Yep.
To spend that money on one field, especially if we're leaning towards a synthetic surface, because that's the only surface that will accommodate everything that we are looking to accommodate.
Yeah. Doesn't much point to it at that point. Okay, all right. So Keith, we're gonna need to schedule that kind of global field discussion, if you will. And I think Selectman Glaby hit the 3 points, the nail on the head there. So,
I guess Betsy added a 4th one too, like an ownership.
an ownership, yeah.
Right.
Who's accountable?
Yeah, accountable, responsible. We'll bake in the feasibility study with that conversation, have Park and Rec come, us. Yeah?
Schools.
Schools, sorry.
Them.
Use them. Minor
Well, as
player.
far as ownership goes, the schools,
Yes,
we can't
that's
be
true.
without the schools, so.
All right, any last comments on Alumni Field? All right, very good. So next one. Library. All right, so let's see, we have Mark and Sam. I think we got room around here for you. So, yeah.
So this is Philip O'Brien, he's our architect with Johnson Roberts. He's going to present some information about the different options we've considered so far and costs. And he's also going to discuss, I think, the slope option, which is the newest option.
Very good, thanks, Sam.
We have all of this.
Oh, perfect, great. Very good. I see at least some of these back there.
You're on the air.
I know, okay.
Okay, so I put together a small slideshow, it's just a dozen or so slides. What I did is, I put together 5 options. These 5 options are you would all ask last time we met as a group. There was a couple of different questions about the cost comparisons. And so what we've done is we've chosen 5 options that we think represent the kind of the breadth of the different options that we looked at. And so we selected one of the additions to the existing library, one new building in the same place as the library as an option. We selected one of the options we looked at from the Morgan property. We selected one of the tennis court options, and then this newest option is the slope at the back of the parking lot here. And I was just going to walk you through those quickly. If anybody wants to slow me down, feel free. But I basically have I've got just a summary slide or two for each of these. So this represents the addition scheme to the existing library. It's basically the library stays the way it is, and we do a multi-story addition out the back, and then do some minor modifications to the parking lot and so forth. These are the plans for that. So you can see the existing library is this kind of T-shaped building down in here, and the addition for the most part is at the rear, and the new entrance comes out to the parking lot. We also looked at an option, this is calling number 2, which is to take down the entire library and build a new 2-story library there in its place. And so we have a set of plans here. Again, the parameters there are dealing with the existing connection to back to the town hall and so forth, maintaining the floor elevations as best we can so that you can still move back and forth between this building and the other. The next option we looked at was on a separate site. And so this property, there's a wetland, as you know. We're looking at there was another study that was done for actually locating the fire station on this property. So we took a quick look at this one as well. And we have a brand new 2-story building that's set back quite a ways from the road. One of the problems with this was visibility, and the other is the distance it is back away from the road and bringing the utilities and so forth into that. And that's another, again, a 2-story building, associated parking, and those were the plans for that. And then there's this tennis court site. This was something that, when looking, trying to think outside of the kind of normal parameters of what the other options were, we looked at this tennis court site and we pursued that a little bit with the option of maybe we looked at a couple of different options of how you might be able to relocate tennis courts somewhere else on site. This one went a little bit further than some of the other plans that we did, and then we also got into some 3-dimensional imagery for this new potential 2-story building that sits, and this would be what it might look like looking in from the street, and the driveway going in between this new building proposed and the existing senior center town hall complex on the left out of the frame. The most recent is this newer idea for locating a 2-story building across the back of the existing parking lot, leaving the existing tennis courts where they are. From the parking lot, you'd be basically looking at a 1-story building for the most part, because you'd come into the upper floor and then go down, and the lower floor would be a lot closer to the lower fields at the rear. So overall, the impact in terms of what it would look like would be a kind of a smaller building, but it also kind of captures that campus feeling in the building. So again, you enter in up on the upper level into the center of the building. There's a circulation desk there, the book stacks are there, all those kind of nice people spaces where the seating and everything looks out towards the fields. And we've got some young adults and administrative spaces. When you go downstairs, there's meeting spaces and children's down at the lower level. And
We also, we put together some images about what that might look like, and so that is a potential for an entrance. And so, for the most part, from the parking lot, what you're looking at is, rather than a two-story building, it looks a little bit more like a one-story building. But when you pull around to the side, obviously this is standing out in the field somewhere, kind of looking back. You get that kind of one-story section up there, and then that lower story is tucked in there under the hill. And so the reason I'm showing you these all is because I wanted to give you an idea about what something like this might cost. And I also printed some of these things out that I can pass around. I've got a dozen or so of them. Get into them. And I will say, there's a big note down the bottom that says these are not cost estimates, and the reason I'm saying that is that we're at the stage now where we haven't really chosen the site yet that we're going to go into, and so we haven't finished designing the building, and because we're really just in a feasibility study stage, I really need to get to the point where we know enough about the building to do a cost estimate. So what we've done here is try to take some of the numbers that we've been seeing in some of our recent library studies, and we picked basically just the highest numbers that we could for each of those things as...
If you could you give one to FinCom?
Sure. A couple more of these.
Did Bonnie get one? Yeah. Yeah.
Big body.
One and one.
Yeah, for Bonnie.
So just make sure,
Yeah.
there's a FinCom number here, so Kevin, you hand that to Mr. Wilson?
Yep, totally.
Okay.
No worries.
So what we did is, in trying to keep all things equal, what we did is we did a, what's called a square foot cost estimate, and we took some numbers that were on the high side of some of the other numbers that we've seen in the recent past, and we put the numbers together. And so up at the top, across the line there, you can see there's options 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, option number 1 is the additions to the existing library. Option 2 is to tear down, put a new building in its place. 3 is the Morgan property with a new building. 4 is the tennis court site, and number 5 is the most recent one that we're looking at across the back. When we look at these things, in the numbers that we've used, again, we try to err on the side of a high number, because really what these are is an order of magnitude comparison between these two things. If you kind of look at the construction numbers that we're looking at today, you're looking at a building that's somewhere between $10.5 and $10.75 million in today's construction dollars, because we're looking at a Board of Library Commissioners grant that's going to take a number of years to work through the process. We have escalation on there that's take you up to the year 2020, and so the rest of these numbers are all based on those 2020 numbers. So these numbers are all based on what a building like this might cost on the high side, to be conservative, in the year 2020, assuming that that's kind of the midpoint of the construction cost. I think really the bottom line is, and it surprised us a little bit, is that the differences weren't really as dramatic as we thought they were going to be. I didn't see, for example, the difference between the tennis court site option and the new slope site option here is about $110,000 in 2020 dollars. And really, the differences here is because the allowances that we put for replacing your tennis courts, we put an allowance in here of maybe $400,000 to replace those. And then we added an access road around the lower slope, which was one of the requests from public safety to get good access around the back. And so that would extend that dirt road that you have on there, that paved road that runs down to the schools, that would run in around the back. Now, there could be some other benefits to a drive like that, access to the field and so forth, but without a design, we had to pick a number, and that's what we chose. So the most expensive option, which is why we kind of eliminated pretty early on, was trying to do additions and renovations to the existing building. It's just because it's so inefficient to do that. And so, but when we look at these numbers, between option 2 and option 5, the numbers are actually pretty close. The differences really are kind of in the margins of error, I would say, looking at a project budget of that magnitude in 2020 dollars.
And I know that, so I thank you for putting this together, because I know, like you said, they're not actual cost comparisons, so we don't want people to get exact numbers stuck in their
It's
head.
also why we try to keep them high, so
But-
anybody who does remember these numbers, we're hoping that when we bring you the new numbers, the actual cost estimates that we're hoping to bring in lower than this.
But it does give us at least a relative feel, which was part of it. I know the other part of it, which is maybe another layer we could put on this, is what would the grant fund as well. But I would assume that would take the same amount of number off of them all, so maybe it's a bit of a wash.
It's a percentage, and the percentage I would guess that you're looking at is going to be somewhere between 50 and 52% of the bottom line down.
So if we have
Can
16.
I ask if these are the library building, this is the new, whatever happens new to the library, and it does not include, for example, with the reuse, so if the library were to exit where they are now, would not, these numbers don't include the reuse of that.
That's right. So that's right. If you decided that you were going to renovate that building or put it to another purpose, you'd be able to do that in all these cases, except for the ones where we're renovating or tearing it down. Right?
So at least,
But those numbers aren't included.
so at least from the perspective of the town, I understand that this is from the perspective of the library, but from the perspective of the town, that the cost that would be incurred for building a new structure and leaving behind the old one,
Yeah.
that there would be
There's
there
value
would
in
be
the
an
existing
additional,
building,
right,
certainly.
and it would need to be reused, and need to just take that into consideration.
Yeah, these first two options wouldn't give you that option, but in these last three, you would have that existing space that you could expand into or use for another purpose. Sure.
Okay.
We would incur an expense. If we were to make that into new
If you
senior
needed to
center.
renovate it, yeah,
Sure.
absolutely, yes, yes.
In option two, where are the demolition costs accounted for there?
Number two.
The demolition costs, there's an allowance, you have to, I'm sorry, it's a little difficult to read, but you have to trace these lines across. So the demolition is actually the first line item under construction. So the allowance for demolition in this case is $100,000.
Okay,
And
so,
that tracks all the way across, there's no demolition.
My kids are gonna do it.
right. It's cheaper to demolish the whole building than it is to demolish part of it?
Yes, selective demolition is actually very complicated. Pushing the whole thing down it would actually be even cheaper if the town hall wasn't connected to it. It just goes quicker.
Right, you have
Time's money.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'd like
So if we
this,
really want to save, we should tear everything down.
And hire us to design it all, right.
okay, I want to take a step back. I think there's going to be more questions about the options and the costs, and I think that, I'd like to just rewind a little bit and then maybe jump ahead back again to that. I know last time we were here, we had a bit of homework. I think a lot of good questions were asked and, some updates were made in email, but I want to make sure everyone has them in no particular order. I just kind of jotted down, I know some of the homework that has been done and research that has been done. So again, in no particular order, but one of the questions that was asked last time was on stress tests and foot traffic, and the question was really, how do we know we need a new library? And we talked about a couple different ways to measure that: stress test, foot traffic. I think there was one other one that I'm not thinking of right now, but there has been research done on that. So Sam, if I could ask you to give an update on those.
So a structural engineer took a look at the floor plans, and he believes that it's around 100 pounds. The building as it is right now would be rated for about 100 pounds per square foot. We weighed the books that are in different sections of the library, and it was upwards of around 130 pounds per square foot in some areas. So it was actually the second floor that was the heaviest, because that's where the adult books are. We thought it would be the children's room because it looks very overcrowded, but they're children's books, so they're much smaller and thinner, and right. So they're actually they actually fell below that 100 pounds per square foot mark in some areas. It was the second floor which caused us some concern. So there, and that wasn't even including the weight of the bookcases. We just weighed the books. So it's pushing the limits. It's not quite over, but it's definitely pushing the limits. And what MBLC, the Board of Library Commissioners, would like to see is 150 pounds per square foot for the building. And right now, as I said, it's probably more, it's closer to 100 pounds.
Do we have a copy of that analysis somewhere? Assessment that was done?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
The assessment wasn't professionally done, we weighed the books. We calculated how much the books weighed.
Right, that's
We
what-
based it on what recommendations were on how to measure them. So there wasn't a professional assessment done on the floor load. We physically, the librarians.
Okay,
weighed the
I
books.
just thought I heard Sam say that there wasn't, somebody
No,
did do an
there was a
assessment.
professional assessment done that said, based on the building plans, they expect it rated at this level, right? And then we went and weighed the books to figure out what the load actually is.
And the library, whatever the acronym was, he said their recommendation is 115 or 150?
150.
150, okay.
And foot traffic study?
So on average, so last year we had 52,000 patrons visit the library. So the average is about 1,000 patrons per week. Some weeks are slower than others due to the winter, but during the summer it increases due to the summer program.
I know you did comparisons with other towns as well, you know, similar foot traffic and their square footage. You had a nice table, actually. It was good. Didn't you have a nice table? I thought, anyway, maybe you could give us some highlights on how that compares.
Sure. So as far as circulation goes, we actually do better than some of the larger towns in the area. So like Fitchburg, their population is 40,000 people, and they circulated 150,000 items last year. Last year, we circulated 180,000 items. So we do pretty well, actually, as far as circulation goes, and foot traffic, and people coming into the library. And Fitchburg is just one of the towns. You know, it varies. It's mostly based on demographics, but because of our location near 495 and Route 2, libraries can rent to other libraries, and you can return books from other libraries here. So we get a lot of people coming here to do business, basically.
Pick up and drop off.
And use our services too.
Okay, and then there was the whole topic on how do you gauge the public's opinion, and I think you've done a couple of different things on that front. How do you?
So we had a public input session a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Knox attended. There were about 25, 30 people there, but everybody had pretty positive things to say about the library and my presentation. I know the steering committee, the master plan committee, I've heard that a lot of people are interested in seeing a new library there. We also had, I've had people give me input on both sides, to be honest, and on Facebook. But for the most part, it's been pretty positive.
And what happened to the survey? I thought
We haven't sent the survey out.
Okay, there's a plan to do a survey.
There is a plan.
And a good socialization for the survey as well. Okay. And the last one I had was kind of concerns about the wetlands. That kind of gets into the options, but I mean, is it a general topic? I think we got clearance that any of the options would not impose on the wetlands. So I guess we could have that as a blanket statement.
Including the last option?
Yes.
Option 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Going down towards the parking lot of the buses.
The building is outside of the wetlands, the road is in the buffer zone. It's outside of the wetlands, but it's within probably the 50-foot line, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is because the question has come up relative to alumni, so I'm certain that it's going to
So
come up
that
relative to...
that picture shows the wetland delineation lines.
This bottom line here?
That's the
100-foot setback.
All right.
Yeah.
So the road is within it, okay.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Fit it perfectly within the 100-foot line.
The Conservation Commission representative didn't think this would be a problem.
So I have a question for you, Sam. I wasn't able to attend. I guess, as I asked Chuck, how many public meetings have you had, or where were they? Were they televised, or, you know, how were they attended? And Who are the
So-
stakeholders showing up, and what are you hearing back from the townsfolk?
So we had a public input session a couple weeks ago, like I said. It was not televised, unfortunately, I didn't get to do that until afterwards. But I do plan to hold more public input sessions in the future, and I will make sure that they're in spots that can televise. But at that public input session, a lot of positive feedback. I don't think I heard anything really negative, just a lot of questions and.
So we've also been going to third Thursdays to present.
Right, to third Thursdays.
I would say that at the public input session, we presented all these options, and the slope site was what most people favored. They liked they liked that option.
Looks nice.
I went to the presentation, and I thought it seemed a fine job. For me, it was a learning process, too. I had no idea that the libraries used that much, so I thought you did a fine job. And it wasn't all the people in the audience, but there was one or two people who made comments about this board, which I didn't think was necessary, because when you came before us last time, and you were showing us the new designs and whatever, I think it caught some of us off guard, thinking that we hadn't gone that far. So that's why there might have been a little bit of a pushback, but, it didn't come from your trustees, didn't come from you, but it did come from the audience. A little bit surprised that someone would do that, but I was really impressed with the presentation you made, and as far as I was concerned, it was a learning process, because I didn't know you had that much foot traffic, for sure.
Okay, board members, other questions, comments?
Sam, what's the present square footage of the library as it is laid out now?
Just under 16,000 square feet.
Okay, and all these variations are around 29,000?
No, 22.
22? Well, I guess I'm looking at the first one. It's the only place it's listed here on this chart. It's 29,958 square feet. Is that correct?
Most of these new buildings are pretty close to 24,000, just over 24,000 square feet total.
29, 24, 22?
The first option is an addition renovation.
Oh, yeah.
And the addition renovation is less efficient, and so
Yeah.
there is more square footage. That's one of the reasons that one is the most expensive.
Okay.
It's difficult to efficiently use the existing space the way it's designed.
And how was that arrived at, as far as determining that that would be the optimum square footage?
Let's have one conversation.
So there was a community needs assessment for my library consultant, and he created a community needs study, and in that study, he recommended 22,000 square foot, or 25,000 square foot building, based on his analysis of the buildings, of what the building.
I remember that was happening over the past year and year before that, correct?
That happened, that study was completed roughly a year ago.
Right. All right. But the public sessions didn't occur until after the
No, there was
proposals?
public sessions before and during, he actually interviewed with the public. We had, the year before that, I believe, we also went through our long-range plan and held public sessions. So there's been many public sessions around the library. There were, when he was doing his study, there were specific public sessions around the new building. The previous ones were around more general, what you would like to see in a library, rather than a specific to what would you like to see in, this brand-new building or whatever. So, every 5 years, the library has to do a long-range plan, and it includes public.
I understand that, yeah.
There was also, we called together a group of community members that volunteered to basically visit other libraries and figure out how they renovated, what they did, and gave their own input on what they'd like to see. I think there were about 20 members in that group. Steve Moore was in the group as well. He's not here right now, but he was in the group. Yeah, so we've had a lot of input.
Is it the case that with the needs assessment, which determined 25,000 square feet, and that was partially funded by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, or it might have been completely funded, I forget how we did it, but does that then become the standard for the building requests, that you need to ask for a 25,000 square foot building in order to qualify for the construction funding, or can you ask for a smaller building?
So that community needs assessment and all of the input we got went into building this building program, which is what I gave to the architect. And he So the building program calls for a 25,000 square foot building, and that's what MBLC approved. So we can make changes, but we're gonna have to give really good reasons for why we want to do that, because they've already approved this plan.
So these are 3,000 square feet smaller? 22,000 and 25,000, you got a 3,000 square foot delta.
Two fire stations for this.
This says 24.5, so they've got a third number in the mix.
So they're building based on what the plan approves, so we're all set on, if our numbers are off between what we're talking about, it's a miscommunication on our part to you, not between us and the architect.
Okay.
They're going off of the plan, right?
Okay.
And I'm misremembering numbers.
Okay.
Right.
One quick question before I go there, and then you're up, Mr. Zeldin, and that is the topic of ownership of the sites involved.
That was our homework, so.
Yes,
Need
yes.
to-
Mr. Harrington.
Sure.
Can you email me that file when you get a chance? Thank you.
Is it possible to put this up on the screen?
Yes, it is. It's more than possible. All is possible.
So, this was a fascinating title search. And I'm gonna kind of walk you through it quickly, and then happy to take any questions. So, the parcel itself, which is U19-21-0, is a 54-acre parcel, and it contains several different municipal uses.
The assessor's map and parcel numbers includes all of this property that's in common town ownership as one parcel. So the assessor's records record what you see here, that is one assessor's parcel. It is made up of many separate parcels, which we had to have town council go through, and he's identified 8.
So, thank you. So,
There's mud.
it gets better. So what you're seeing here, these 8 lots, these were acquired kind of over the course of, from the 20s to the 60s, in essentially 8 different acquisitions. So that's what made this kind of tricky, because this map doesn't exist anywhere other than the assessors had it in their historical records. So there's no map on file with the registry or anywhere else that shows how we acquired each parcel. So this is a really good estimate, but it's nothing more than a really good estimate. And it would be fantastic to have a surveyor go out and survey each of these properties, so we saw, but I don't know that we need to spend our money that way. I think there's other ways to correct what we need to correct. But in looking at it, the TO, that's where the town offices are located. TC is the tennis court. Parcel E is, as best I can tell, a mostly vacant parcel. There's Lot 2, which I believe is the kind of parking behind the town offices and then going back. Lot 3 and 4, which I believe are currently used for schools. Athletic field, which is currently used for schools. And Lot 1 is the Russell Street School. Okay, so yeah, and then you can see the kind of the satellite view from here. So that's what you have. So the question that I was tasked with answering was on the tennis court parcel, and then on the rear slope option, which isn't shown on here, who owns it and what needs to happen in order to use it for a library purpose. So let's start with the tennis court parcel. The tennis court parcel was acquired by the town for school purposes. So here's the interesting part. We acquire the land through a town meeting. We're going to acquire this land for school purposes. Ideally, the town should then assign it to the school department, and that's the cleanest way to go about this, and then the school department controls the land. It's that second step that never occurred. So that's why there's some cleaning up to do, in my opinion. My advice is to take those parcels that are currently under school committee control, and I can tick them off for you. It's the tennis court site, which I think it's under school control, and it would stay under school control because it's a tennis court, unless we decide to use it for a library, in which case the school committee needs to declare it as surplus, report that vote to you, and then we go to town meeting to transfer the care, custody, and control of the land by 2/3 vote to either the selectmen or to the library for library purposes. Kind of next interesting, town offices. Again, it was a school, it was acquired for school purposes. We know that at some point, we stopped using it as a school. We know that in the mid-'80s, mid to late '80s, we moved the library in here. And we know that in the mid-'90s, the town offices moved in here. And I'm sure there was a plan in place at the time and everyone understood it, but for my research, looking for the specific vote from town meeting, I couldn't locate it. So again, my advice on the town office parcel is you have a number of options. You can put the whole thing in general municipal use for the selectmen's control. The school committee could save that school offices piece, and/or you could transfer the library
Third
piece.
floor and above. You have the air rights.
Yeah.
I was gonna give a proposal after you're all done.
We'll give you the air.
Right, so I'm not trying to make anyone's decision for them, but it seems to me obvious that we want to get the general municipal uses on this map in the hands of the selectmen, and the school uses in the hands of the school. And for that one, so the school committee owns or controls most of these. They do tennis court town offices, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. The selectmen control parcel E and athletic field.
So you want to look at that overlay, because that athletic field is actually a school.
Right, so I call it the athletic field because the acquisition was called the acquisition of athletic fields.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of my differentiating based on what the deeds were called, not what's currently.
Right, the athletic field site, in fact, includes the middle school.
Right, right.
So who owns the slope site?
So that's an interesting question. And again, so, because these are very specific sites with very specific control issues, and because we don't have a survey, I estimate more generally, because it's better to be too big than too small, but I believe the slope site would include the tennis court site, a bit of parcel E, and a bit of lot 2. That's my best safe guess.
In part because the access to the slope site goes through property that includes those other sites.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, right, so that's where we are, and the letter I submitted spells out the process for fixing these things. We don't need to fix them today, but we do have a town meeting coming up, and all things being equal, it would be nice to get the land under, get it cleaned up.
And the only one that really, excuse me, Madam Chairman, is the only one that really is in question in regards to dual ownership would be the tennis court, because if it's access to the slope and they're not, it's the back portion of the parking lot, the tennis courts don't need it, right?
Well, so by my
So-
count, the tennis court,
Otherwise,
tennis courts
lot
remain
2
with the
is,
slope side.
yeah, lot two is town municipal. E, which is, parcel E is huge
Yeah.
municipal. That should be slid up for the athletic fields down at Russell Street. And that tennis court, so, can we redefine those borders in our, no, you can't.
No, and again, so the problem, I suppose we could, but you'd need to go through the same
Yeah, through
process.
town meeting, I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
So I mean,
Do a survey
if we're,
plan
if
and
we're
bring
gonna
it to
do
town
it,
meeting.
I think we should really tighten up those lines so we can have well-defined, half the
Right.
tennis court in, half the tennis
Right.
court out, you know.
And the reason I thought the tennis court site was in on the slope option was not, well, the tennis courts remain with the slope
Right.
option, but it looks like parking moves a little forward in the plan, and it just again, trying to be conservative, it appears to me it might impose a little bit on the tennis court site.
Yeah, so I'm representing the school committee, not acting as the school committee, but I would be wondering if we want to bring back a proposal to maybe do what you're talking there, take like a line where you see where the point is on lot 1 and 3 and over to the corner on parcel E. Redivide that whole parcel into 2 parcels, the one that's primarily town functions, which is this half of it, and then the other half, which is primarily school functions, and sort of redefine the ownership based on a much more simplified
Absolutely,
lot.
yeah, I mean, you know, we can't sit here and get a crayon out, but.
You know, yeah, that's essentially
to
what I
make it-
did, was a crayon across
Yeah,
there.
to
But,
make
you
it-
know, make it so that the school stuff
Absolutely.
is primarily the school
Absolutely.
stuff. We tighten up the MOU with the tennis courts, because we do need them for the high school program, things there. Maybe try to do some kind of global simplification of this whole process here. Would be what I would like to take back to the school committee as a recommendation.
Can I just add, the other thing that has to be taken into account there is the ball field, whether, who ends up controlling the ball field in this picture.
Shattuck.
Shattuck Street, right? Because
Yeah.
the selectmen don't control any of the ball fields right now, they're all under school control, so that one needs to be figured out who that goes to.
Actually, they're in the parking
Lot
right,
2.
based on the MOU, so,
No, well, they're owned by the
Ownership,
school.
yeah.
It's the ownership.
Curb is the only one that's not.
Right.
Said has.
Actually, Mark's point was one of the points I was going to make. In terms of this other discussion about the ownership and who actually has responsibility for these things, we need to tie that in with this discussion, where these
Sure.
fields really go. I mean, because
Absolutely.
we do have park and rec in school, and maybe the selectmen are the right answer for some of these things. You know, I think, but my question to you is, what difference does it make? Aside from somebody being saying it's mine, you can't have it, because we kind of support these in general, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
school isn't paying because it's theirs or not. Yeah.
It's probably worth just reminding folks, why did we bother to ask town council to look through our ancient records to
Right.
come up with this? And the reason is not to satisfy ourselves, but so that the library trustees can satisfy the funding agency
Okay.
with a representation that the library trustees have control or will have control of their chosen site. And from our discussion, and separate and apart from town council's analysis of what we need to have town meeting vote to do, it's like, this is, what do we need to do to satisfy ourselves ultimately in town council? Then, but the more immediate question is, what do the library trustees need to do to satisfy their funding agency? And the bar, that, and from my understanding from Sam, that bar is lower. That they are not looking for a vote of town meeting, but they are looking for a conditional vote of whichever entity controls the site now, that they are willing to declare it surplus if the library project goes forward. And so that's.
Have the right.
All of that was declared municipal property.
No, but
Go ahead,
I
yeah,
wanted
okay.
to-
Okay, yeah.
And
Yep.
there's what the town has to do, but there's also what the schools have to do, given that there's a legal definition of the school property
Right.
and the implications of transferring property back from the school to, back to the town. The other part, and I forwarded some information that we need to research, is once you accept state money for any of your buildings, before you can declare them surplus, which is what you're asking the school department to do, we have to make sure that we're unencumbered from any of the state monies that were applied to any of the buildings. So there's a lot of little pieces there, otherwise you have to pay back any monies that were used on the thing there. I think I probably passed that on this building here, but again, it just as town council was doing this work, somebody's got to wind back through the records to make sure.
If we were talking about Russell Street School,
have
that would be quite a moment, because there is a, formula, and if we suddenly decided we didn't need it as a school anymore, that there is a payback, a provision. the older you get, and I don't, and
Yeah.
I'm,
We need to research.
you know, we need to research, yeah.
I did have a chance to look
Yeah.
into this, so I think, the town offices would be the real concern there. I'm not concerned that the regulation you forwarded is in play for that. This building goes back 100 years.
Older than Joe.
I didn't want to go there.
I was
But the funding
only to the
mechanism
Roosevelt administration.
that was
right?
in place when these three, kind of parts of the building is completely different than what's in place now. And actually, I think there's a problem with the regulations because I think they're looking at an old set of reimbursement rates and not the new
That
set.
don't
But
apply.
again, I don't think that's a problem. If we're looking at any of the recently constructed schools, I agree with you.
Anyway, it's just something I think we need to make sure, because there's also provisions in there that make you ineligible for future grants for some period of time also. So we got to make sure we do it correctly. That's what this is
Right.
really about, is
So
doing
there's,
it correctly.
from the
not-
state, it makes a difference on whether within the town land, whether it's designated as school land or whether it's just general town land? That's a significant difference?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think that's the difference. I think what the state is really looking at is they are helping you fund the construction of a school.
Right.
And they expect that school to have a useful life of about 50 years. And if your school is going to have a useful life of less than that, they want to understand why. And if they don't like the answer, they can impact your funding.
But what does that have to do with the land, though? Buildings and, I mean, I don't, that's
It
what I
doesn't have
understand
anything
to
to
me.
do with the land, it has to do
It's
with
the building.
This is all land here, though. This has nothing to do with buildings, right?
No,
No,
the
there's
athletic
buildings
fields,
on the land.
yeah, there's the athletic field too, and this building. Russell Street School is on the athletic field that's defined right there.
So the best example really is town offices. Town offices is under the care, custody, control of the
Right.
school committee, but they
Right.
don't want
I'm
to
sorry.
be responsible for the town offices or the library.
Russell Street to me.
You're right.
Mrs. Zeldin, I think you had a comment earlier, I forgot about you.
Mike Zeldin, Luann Street. Location, location, and function. We talked about location and size. Has any progress been made on, by the trustees? Have you gotten any feedback that would suggest what is the role or function of the library going forward? Is it, what you presented here, to me, looked like archive circulation with programs that happen to come along with it? Is there anything you're looking at that makes this enter the 21st century?
Yeah, so the grant requires that we look 20 years into the future. The building has to remain there for 20 years. So we're looking to design more space for computers, more space for meeting spaces, more program.
Yeah, there's more open space. The new library doesn't have, the new buildings don't have that much more stack space per se, other than making it more accessible. But they have more space for collaborations and meetings and reading areas. More of a community-centered feel than just, a little nook here where you can read and things like that. So.
Have you looked at any of the models around the country or elsewhere where modern libraries are being put up?
Right, so that.
Small libraries?
When I told you that the community came together, they were going, part of what they were tasked with doing was going to other libraries that have just been renovated and seeing what they did and what kind of changes they made looking into the future, because this whole grant process is something that happens every 5 years. So they were looking at, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, how they designed for the future, what spaces were improved, and as far as, study spaces, meeting spaces, technology. That was all looked at, and that's what we put into this program to give to the architect to design. Does that answer your?
No, but that's all right, you're just starting. This seems, when I looked at it, I have to say, I was stunned by how low priced a modern library turned out to be. I mean, the cost estimates, it had nothing to do with the building, the function.
Internet and the whole wiring.
Yeah, I was rather surprised by, shall we say, and there's nothing wrong with it. If Littleton, if we decide that we want a library that does X and Y and Z, that's fantastic. I was just curious to find out if any thought had been given as to what its role will be in the town in the very near and far future. That's it. I mean, if it's archive and circulation with program, if that's what you have, and you're going to have some connection with it, network to the outside, that's great.
So
It's a
the role of the library is constantly evolving, so that's why it's hard to give you like a straight answer to that.
Sam, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we have to.
Well, I'm a trustee.
Okay.
And we discussed this during the meeting, and as we go
Name and
forward-
address, sorry.
I'm sorry. My name is Demetra Taylor, 115 Taylor Street, and I'm a library trustee. To answer your question in terms of what the library could be used for in the future, we have to consider in the next 10 to 20 years, how is the population in Littleton going to change? How is it going to increase? What type of people are going to be moving in? And what are they going to be doing in the town? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, do we have a community center where people can congregate and meet others and participate in different events and hobbies? And I'm not speaking about book clubs or business meetings conducted by IBM. Just a general place where people can gather and run community events that need to be done indoors, and possibly even outdoors. If we expand our space, the programs and events that we can offer in Littleton can be held there, as opposed to the center of town, where their Thursday is currently, which can get very congested. It's not just circulation and borrowing books and borrowing DVDs and borrowing CDs. It has really become a center where our youth can go, as an alternative if they are not athletes. It's a place for children to go after school, so they have a safe place to be able to go and to learn, different programs and whatnot. It's also an option for our seniors. If they need to learn how to utilize technology, the library can offer programs to allow them to do certain things as that. So it's really a community center that could benefit the entire town for all different ages.
So can I add one thing for your concern? The architect's plans haven't been set in stone, right? And we will be, once we have a site, once we have a firm site, we will go into more details on what exactly goes into those buildings. And we would welcome you at the meetings to discuss that.
It was not a criticism.
I'm not trying to criticize either. We welcome anyone's input.
And I do, if I may say so, I do think that Mr. Zeldin has some really cool futuristic ideas, actually. I like the things that he's thinking of, so I would highly encourage that. Mr. Wickham, yes, name and address.
David Whitcomb, Suffolk Drive. We have two decent places for folks to get together, and they're both totally unutilized. One is the multi-purpose center that, when it's not being used for exercising, in the diner, that could be opened more with some control. And we also have the Hartwell Community Center at 19 Shattuck Street. It too is dormant 95% of the time. They put a puzzle together and drink coffee once in a while. It could be used for the whole town if anybody wanted to go there that wasn't living there, that was a senior or otherwise. But nobody's doing anything. It's just, both of those areas are just sitting there waiting for someone to walk in. And we're already paying taxes on them. I don't connect this with the library at all. I caught it. Why not get someone there to do a little bit now? We won't have a nice room, and I hope we do, in 4 or 5 years when the library is built, and I hope it's on that slope. But in the meantime, I know I digress, but
That's good.
why not? Jesus, they're underutilized, we're paying for them. Get somebody in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, name and address, although.
She had a hand up first, Alicia.
Oh, I didn't, I can't see you back there. Hey, Alicia.
I think he was going to.
Oh, sorry, Andrea.
Andrea Curran, 20 Middlesex Drive. It isn't just big spaces too. Increasingly, people are working from home and they can't make those work calls at home. So we have people coming in using a small meeting room just to make a phone call, to meet with another person having to do with their job or socially. Older people just not learning anything, but just wanting a cool place in the summer to read magazines that they can read for free. They don't have to subscribe to. They can just sit in the reading area, chat with each other, gets them socializing. In the wintertime, they come in because it's warm and their houses might be cold. And I don't have to say, I mean, the kids just love it. I mean, you guys, come visit us. Come see us this summer and see all the stuff that's going on. The kids are crazy. I mean, everybody loves it. They're having a great time. And it just, we want to be the town's living room, you know, where people hang out, because there aren't places for people to go so much. The kids walk up from the schools. Their parents feel that they're safe walking up here and hanging out at the library. Where else are they going to go? We'd like to be everything. So come see us.
Mr. Sanders. Sorry.
Just to let you know.
Yeah, George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I want to clarify something. When I said dispose of the library funding, I was talking about it at the state level. My whole concerns is facility. It has nothing to do with the personnel that work in the library. I think they do a great job. I was not talking about eliminating the library in Littleton. I was talking about a new facility. My comment revolves around a new facility. The first question I have is that on this preliminary stage of going out, doing the possibility study of a library, did the library board come to the selectmen? Did you know that they was going to the state and request funding from the state?
We did.
Okay. The next thing is, why didn't this board at that time put on a public meeting for the citizens in this town to talk about a library of an impact when we had the fire station coming up? People concerned about their taxes in this town. And how is that going to impact the taxes if they go with the library? And mostly you got anywhere between probably 48 to 50 or 52% that you may get from the state. It all depends on how much money they got as to when you go in and what they're going to give you. Well, that other impact, if they're talking about $10 million, then you're looking at the other impact to be paid by the taxpayers. And I have a real concern when you short fuse the taxpayer and you don't give the taxpayers the opportunity to talk. This is what has been brought up time after time in this town about not getting the people involved. This is a major capital improvement project, and the people are the one that ends up paying for it, and we get little bits and pieces of it. They go out, they have them. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here for the meeting, on the public meeting, but even at 25 people to put a $5 million tag on the town, saying, okay, let's go with it. This is something that they have griped about all along. Not enough people being involved in it, and I hold this head of this town, which is the selectman here. You're not doing your job when you don't put this in place for the people to come out and speak about a project that's supposed to go forward. You should have some indicator that the people are behind you on this. And this project here, with this here, you had that with the fire station. What's the difference between the library if they want to go forward with that to do? You should have did the same thing. When you don't get people involved, 50% of communication is the solution to almost any problem. And I reach about a 10 or 15% here.
Here, here.
I couldn't agree more with that last aspect, and that's exactly why we're here today. And I think that FinCom brought that up at the beginning, and that's where this conversation is definitely going to head. We have too much going on, and we need to prioritize. With that as a conversation we will have to have. So far, though, it's only been a space needs study that's been done, right? And we got recommendations for that.
And that was authorized by town meeting.
And that was authorized by a town meeting. So that conversation did get started, and we're now at that point where we have enough information to start having that conversation that you're talking about. So totally understand. There was something else you mentioned too, which I can't remember.
I'll just make a comment. I mean, that's why we have elected, you have the library board. They're out trying to do what the fire chief has been doing. They're out saying, all right, we have an idea. Let's get people involved, have their meetings, hold their public hearings. I wish they were televised, but as Sam said, in the future they will be. But, you know, community involvement is what it's all about, right? So we need to make sure that folks hear us tonight so that they can get involved with the library trustees and Sam to be able to have their input heard. What this board did was authorize them to go to the state to get some money to have the study done. And that's it.
Can I add? That was actually done by town meeting, right?
Correct.
We, 3 or 4 years ago, we went to town meeting and asked for funding for the feasibility study that we're completing now, right? And we got, the town paid for half, well, actually, it ended up being the town paid for about a third, the state paid for a third, and then the trustees are covering any extra, right? Which will be probably the other third, roughly speaking, so.
Thank you. Alicia, I think you are next.
Alicia Day, Westchester Drive, and I'm also the director for Littleton Parks, Rec, and Community Education. So I just want to state that that is our mission statement. We're recreation and community education. We are tasked by the town, by you, to be able to provide programming for all of our residents, okay? I realize that the library needs to be able to change and grow as time goes on, but again, that is our mission statement. And if we are being pegged into being sports only, then there is a grave misunderstanding of what it is that we provide to this town. We provide crafts, arts, education of all components, whether it's computer, it could be, we have a huge brochure, and we put it out on 3 times a year to be able to provide all of that. And I can tell you, communicating with other recreation departments, even from other towns that I've been in to visit, they're overwhelmed with what we are able to offer. And, you know, if we talk about what a role and what changing role of the library is, it shouldn't be taking over the recreation and community ed department's mission statement. That's just how I feel.
I think that's a good point, thank you. Mr. Wickham, I'll just let her speak and then you're next.
Hi, Amy Tarley-Lewis at 3 Omega Way, and I'm just trying to understand more the overall process. So we have a library and a fire station and athletic needs, and I'm just trying to understand in regard to the master plan, are we trying to get the master plan done first, get more information about all these 3 projects, and then start making decisions, or are we making decisions on all these 3 projects and the master plan just kind of happens on a separate tack? I'm sort of wondering what the relationship is.
Well, I guess my first comment on that would be, we can't stop acting while waiting for the plan to be developed, but we can't also, you know, don't go totally off track from where that's probably headed. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and so I think some stuff is gonna fall, you know, into master plan, but in the meantime, some stuff is gonna hit us fast, and then we can deliver that plan plus an implementation plan on top of the master plan. So they're gonna have to be, you know, in parallel and working together for sure. I know priority setting as a process is a big thing. Actually, we're way late to be setting our goals, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk about is, you know, their prioritization process, back to Mr. Sanders' comments. How do we decide what gets the priority, how it gets funded, in what order, and all that? Those are things we don't, you know, we have a general method for right now, but no official process. So it's a bit of a parallel act for the moment until we've got the plan.
Yeah, 'cause I see the importance of all the projects, and I mean, my favorite project is the library project, but I understand the need. I don't want to have to pick between the library and safety and the kids' safety on the field. And I feel like there's just fracturing and ripping of the fabric of our community around these 3 projects. And I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is the guidepost to move us through this process in a way that kind of brings us all together. Because they're all important, and I see the need for all of them, and I know they're all expensive, and they can't all get done, and I guess.
That's right. And there's more as well. Mr. Whitcomb?
David Whitcomb, Suffolk Drive. If I hear correctly, and I came a little late, if I hear correctly, and I've read a lot before I came here, that all the steps taken so far are correct. And nothing was done to push or shove or do anything wrong. It was just done as it should be. Then there must be a perception in the town that it was perhaps going too fast and we should slow down. And some people just can't read or comprehend how it could have come along so fast. Now, I'm going to be humorous for a minute. If we have a major project down the road, it seems that we should have the team that is working in the library, for the library, to do other projects. Look how much they've accomplished. It's a compliment. But there is a perception among a number of us that it's just too good to be true, too quick, whatever, and it's just maybe a short breather. Not for the fire station, we need it. And for the other two projects, to try and find that balance. And damn, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Sell, 53 Washington Drive, excuse my throat. We had a lot of children in children's rooms today. One thing I wanted to go back to the Park and Rec statement about the library fulfilling a community need. You really can't compare it. The library, when a person walks in that door, what they get is free. They're not buying to learn. We pay our taxes, but it levels everybody. I have seen people that might not be able to do Park and Rec come and do things there. It's like apples and oranges. Our community, we both teach. But when you walk through a library door, keep in mind, you are equal to use any facility, no matter what your age, what your income, or what your need. It is a little bit different.
Well said.
Okay. Okay, and what I'd say on that front, I think that is also another conversation that we definitely need to continue, and I don't know if it's, myself and Sam and Mark and Alicia, or I don't know what the right format is, but we certainly want to make sure that the mission of these two functions is like this and not like this, right? That we're solving the community needs in the right way. And Alicia has a very valid point that the Park and Rec is self-funded. They run on funds. So how can we make sure that both of these are successful and not at odds? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely a conversation that we need to have as well. All right, so we are way over, and I apologize, but I wanted to make sure that, everyone got their input in here. Now,
We talking about funding too?
yeah, like the little.
So from the library's perspective, we have some timelines going forward, right? Where we like to apply for the state grant, which will pay for half of the construction costs approximately. That application's due in January. In order to meet the application deadline, it doesn't mean we're building a new library, it just means we're in line to be able to do whatever we want to do if the town so votes at a later date to pay for it. We need to know a site really soon so that they can finish the architect can finish their plan and we can get a cost estimate going, right? It doesn't mean that we're building a new library, it just means we can move forward with the plans. So
Time urgency on that, let's talk about.
means.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we need to deal with the map that town council has found first before we can answer your question. In my opinion, let's get that squared away, make sure that the state is aware of who owns what, and we're aware of who owns what and who's responsible and who controls the property. That's gonna be step one.
That shouldn't delay, I wouldn't think,
I was gonna say,
making a
how definitive
decision of what the
does it have to
priority
be?
is. I mean, might have a different priority than you, but I think we can reach a decision
Wait a
earlier.
minute, Mark. Wait a minute, Mark.
Okay.
When is the next meeting?
Of the library?
Yeah.
Right after we leave here. We also have a meeting on September 1st, but that's getting really close to when the architect needs to know.
So you could potentially have.
We could potentially,
Like
but
Mr. Carr
basically-
alluded to, we've met every Wednesday since, it seems like the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Relative to alumni field,
So
so.
what we need is just permission to say, look, we want to put the library on site X, Y, or Z, right?
But you want to get as much input from the community as possible.
Because what if they wanna stay where it is? I mean, that decision hasn't been made yet, you know? So, that, I think
So
that's a
from-
question that.
from-
Are you asking us to
Wait,
say
let
use
me-
site B tonight?
No, what I'm saying, we need to actually submit two sites. One is our existing, I believe. But we also need an alternative as part of the grant. And we need to know what that is in short order so that we can say, have them cost these things and get real numbers rather than what he presented as.
I would say that we need to get more input. We need to get more input from the community.
On where a library goes?
Yeah. So you've done the meeting where Sam presented the sites, including the slope, right? And 25 people attended. I'd say try to get as much input as possible between now and September 1st. I know, as a member of this board, I want to have as much information from the community as possible.
Melissa?
The survey may help as well. Andrea?
But the selectmen did charge us with having a site selection committee. And we had people from PMBC, we had Board of Health, we had all, and what we were charged with was find a site for the library. We did have some input, I mean, we had all kinds of stuff. We went to, and that's what we came up with. That's what we were supposed to do, and that's what we came up with. And so I don't understand why you're asking us to do this again. We already did it. That's what we did. What else was that for? It was a library site selection committee. Melissa was on it.
Yeah. I'm not. I think that's absolutely what the site selection committee was charged with. So we have sites selected, so now we have to find out what the community wants. Which site? We have to narrow that down. We have to get that input.
Yeah, I think there's ambiguity in terms of, and maybe, I know you've explained it a couple of times, and maybe it bears repeating, I think there's two parts of the process. There's the grant application, which requires a new site being proposed, as well as the renovation option. What's confusing to me is which one, where do you express the community preference of which one of those options you want? It's implied right now, and I think that's what's maybe getting people a little thing there, is the lowest cost one is the one that you will select, and the lowest cost one is building a new facility. And I think that's the decision that hasn't been made as a community. Build a new facility, renovate the facility, and it's based more on just the bottom line presented in the gross cost estimates. And I think that's where there's...
You can make that statement.
Well, that's where, okay, maybe from my perspective, that's where it is there, because I don't know whether, if we vote to approve the slope site for inclusion in the grant, does that mean that's the preferred option for the town for its next library? Which is a different question than which of the four options being presented in the grant application is the community's preference. I have my own preference, which I've not expressed, and I think other people in this room have a preference of which has not really been discussed. And I don't know where that falls in terms of the grant application process.
Right. Yeah.
I think they're saying the same thing.
I think we are saying the same thing.
Yep.
Which is different than the slope site versus the Morgan property, because I know they need one of the two to put onto the grant.
Well, yeah, the tennis court's a slope of the Morgan Road. Right. But I mean, as far as the numbers being the guiding light here, I don't think that's the case, because the first statement you made was, this is basically a ballpark, right? We're not gonna rest our hat on these, it's just for relativity. So you know that number one is the most expensive. These others are within a few $100,000 above that.
Okay, yes.
Jenna Brownson, Harvard Road, I'm a library trustee. So what does the Board of Selectmen want? You want 300 Facebook people to vote, you want a written survey. The last thing I want to do is have us come here on September 1st and say, well, that wasn't enough. Because we've done surveys and we've done studies and had people come to the library, not just the 25 that came a few weeks ago, but over the last many years, people have been involved with this process. So what will satisfy you so that you can say, we think the library trustees did what they needed to do over the course of the last many years?
So I think one thing that's already in the works is the survey and get that out more widely and more refreshed. So I know that's in the works. I'm hearing now some more public input sessions like the library, like the fire department. What would you maybe a couple more rounds of those.
So can I ask when the fire department did theirs, they did it on what site they were using?
Sure they
Or
did.
what?
Yes. What was the question? Yes.
What site the fire department was being built at was part of those? Because I never got any notification on any of them. So,
We publicized them. We publicized them and posted them, okay? And we also invited the whole neighborhood 3 times.
but to invite a neighborhood means you picked the
Oh, wait,
neighborhood.
And we posted it for a public meeting.
What I'm asking is, did we go through this with different things on picking a site or what was in the building?
And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, so.
There were several sites considered.
Right.
Because we've went through this, we've already had at least 6 meetings on this now with the library, right? And I'm wondering how many more we have to end up doing, right?
Well, I'm hearing the public input sessions, and I heard it at the beginning of the meeting from the public as well, right? So I think a couple more of those.
As you can get in.
As many as you can get.
Can we
in.
define
Excuse me, sorry.
I think that what Mr. DeCoste was saying is, if the September is, January is your date, right, is your deadline for the application, if you can come back to us and say, you know, here's specifically what we said with the survey, and get it out to as many people, and have more public type hearings in where people may not be able to go, but they can at least go on LCTV and take a look and hear the discussions, hear what the presentations are. I think that'd be very helpful. Because I hear that from a lot of folks in town now. When did this come up? So that's, if we can defer and say, yeah, there's been meetings on these dates, go to LCTV and take a look, you'll be able to get educated, have your input, send it to the library trustees, send it to the library director, so that they have some type of resource to hear your voice. Because as we heard earlier, I get that question too.
Which question are you?
It's, when did this all start? Why all of a sudden?
There have been over
So
50
I'm
meetings.
just saying what I hear, Jenna. That's all I'm saying.
There have been over 50 publicly posted meetings between the library trustees and PNBC and FinCom. So for anyone to make it sound like this is coming out of thin air is disingenuous, if not outright ignoring the fact that this has been going on for years.
I can also say that this has been on the capital plan since I've been on the board of the library, which is 10 years. So it's not
Yeah,
coming out of thin
but
air.
Mark, in truth, you know, and I was on the, fortunate that I was on the finance committee, budget for the library was one of the charges I had for a couple of years, so I was aware of the grants that were being sought, the studies that were being done. But as recently as your report last August about the, finance committee and then at a separate meeting, the selectmen meeting, I wasn't on the board at the time, it was that the space needs were being studied. It was last fall when that became a determination of that had, resulted in a need for a new library. So that the study of needs was, yes, indeed, going on prior to that. But I think, it is, in the town's, mindscape, a relatively new concept for them to be chewing on if it first came on the radar screen last fall, and it is now appearing in a much more realistic, concrete dollars and cents format. And I appreciate the timetable you got for January, and I don't think there's any reason we should stand in the way of allowing you to, to go, work toward that, whether it means clearing up a land issue or whatever, especially since you have two options to, you're required, as I understand, to have two options, one being existing sites renovation or remodeling or whatever it is, and then one of the other three sites. And the fact that it doesn't look like in any reasonable time, perhaps, no earlier than late fall, we're going to have hard numbers that look different than the spreadsheet we got tonight. It's impossible for me to look at that and make any determination on numbers, which is only one consideration anyway, and it looks, but the one lesson gleaned is by happenstance of design, they're all roughly about the same, so, okay, I get that. That's not going to be a big factor, or at least coming out of tonight's meeting, it's not going to be a big factor. I'd love to see those numbers get a little more detailed and harder. But as far as making a choice of which option to go with, I don't know that it's our call. It's not on us to decide which of your options to push. I think it's, goes right back to you to advocate on behalf of one. And, if you win over the public or this board or anyone else, I mean, that's all part of the process, winning over support. So,
I agree with that entirely. The problem is we need either the school board or the Board of Selectmen or both to at some point in the near future to say, yes, you can use this parcel so that we can go and say, we're going to put a library, we're looking to put a library here, and we will work to win over the public support.
Yeah,
But we need rough permission to say, yes.
I would advocate for a consensus tonight that we should not, any personal reservations about what we need and how much we need shouldn't stand in the way of picking one of the sites.
I agree.
So if that's an issue, then, why don't we just direct, council to give us the legal means of working with whoever to do that. And if you want an affirming vote of this board, I'd be happy to make that motion. But don't interpret that to mean I'm personally sold on one of your proposals, but, I'd like to be sold on one of them.
Okay, so, yes. Mr. Rocco.
David Whitcomb. I think it's an open secret that people in this town, many people, have been talking for many years about a new library. Sometimes, because we know we need it, we always need a new, fresh library. They're doing it now by doing things in the walls that they have. We started in this town in 1887 with a totally imperfect library. William S. Houghton gave the town $10,000 to buy books, and they stuffed them in the new town hall. And he loved giving it, and for a private reason, but it wasn't enough. And he knew this little triangle down there was owned by Goldsmith, I think. And he'd given it to the town, and he gave another $25,000 and built a perfect library for the time. By 1989, it was no longer a perfect library. It was bursting. And they came up here to a nice, spacious place that was not originally designed as a library. And they have made do, and they have grown, and all of the programs they have. So this perception of a fast track, and I made a little fun that if you guys wanted to use them for another project, go ahead, they do a good job. But there's been a current in the town for years. So they did a fast track, so what? We're here at this point. And the new facility is the least expensive, is that correct? And the renovation is a little bit more? Is that right?
Most of it.
Oh, well,
Quite a bit more.
what, the renovation?
The renovation.
Okay, all right. So the new site, the slope site, is the least expensive, and it will be the most perfect because when you renovate, you just renovate. I don't see a problem with the choice. please, I would. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, last questions, we have to wrap this up.
Madam Chair.
Hold on one second, Mr. Sanders.
Sorry, apologies.
No, just going by what Jenna said, and the people who were involved in that library, the passion you have for that, and the people around you, I can understand when you say that we've had 50 meetings, and I doubt that one bit. And my suggestion would be, between now and September, have a public meeting in this room that's on TV, because the power of cable TV is tremendous, the amount of people who see that don't normally see your meetings. You know, I'm surprised at how many people actually see that. So it'll get people in the public that'll actually say, oh, I didn't know about the library, and I had a chance to go to that meeting.
And that'll help your survey, actually, too.
Yeah, then you can refer back to the meeting with the link. Yeah. Mr. Sanders.
Okay, Madam Chair. The question that I have is, I think what the library is trying to do is that they're trying to get on the list at the state for funding. And what is being asked here, which I don't quite understand why, I don't know how many places that they can list on that application, but we know we're talking about 5 locations that they're speaking of. So how many, to them, how many places can you list on this application is the question I think that is important here. Because if you can list 3 locations, I would say do the renovation and do 2 other locations if that can be done. Because I think that's what they're trying to do, is get on the list. And they need to be able to do that.
Can I just, to wrap this up, Paul, we would welcome your motion that you guys would, if we decide to go forward with partial E, I guess, or whatever it is, that, the library can use it. We welcome the same motion from the school committee, right? That clears our hurdles of going forward and saying, we're going to cost out site X and site Y. The trustees will hold open meetings between now and January out the wazoo to say, these are the 2 things that we're looking for going forward. Which one does the town prefer? And then when we submit the grant, we'll have 2 sites in there and say, because we have to cost them both out for that, and we'll say, this is the one that the town likes better. But we need the first hurdle cleared so that we can say, A or B or C, right? Because we can't cost out 5, it's just it gets too expensive from our perspective, and it's too,
While making those comments, Mark, just not to further complicate things, I was not really considering the Morgan property, which I think has other issues, but I'm not sure even a vote's required, but I'll make a motion anyway, if the chair doesn't mind, that, or whatever, I'll wait for
Can we just
input
clarify
first.
how many?
Mr. Sanders, question?
Well, no, actually,
sorry.
to Mr. Rembach's point, the number keeps coming up 2 sites. But are you?
The current site and one other site.
so we have
Is it
to
the
show.
current site and one other site?
We have to
For
show,
the application?
yes, we have
Yes.
to show that we consider 2 sites.
You have to show that
Can
you
you show
consider
more
2
than
of those
2?
sites.
But you're only
Your
gonna design
application, you're only designing and applying for a grant for 1.
So we will pick that one site based on community input, but we need to narrow it down from 5 right now to effectively 2, because we can't afford to cost out them, and we can't afford the time.
You're getting cost estimates for 2, right?
No,
1.
single building. What the requirement
He
is.
says 1, so you have to
No,
decide.
I think there's a confusion here.
This is what I want to clarify.
What
Thank
the
you.
application requires is that you look at an addition renovation of your existing building and at least 1 additional site. And the reason is because the board doesn't want you to stay hemmed in. They want you to look at what your other options are. They want you to look abroad to see whether or not there's some other options that might suit. If you choose to stay on your existing site, you design a building, you do a cost estimate, you put in your application for that. If you've chosen another site, you design that building, you design the site, you do a cost estimate, you put in an application to fund that project. They only want 1 project in your application.
Yeah, that makes.
Thank you.
And the other one's like a reserve in case something should go wrong with the first one? Is it?
No, actually, if you are, now this is a little bit
I
of
mean,
a
what's the
trick.
whole point of the second one?
They want you to look outside of your own back door.
Yeah, all right.
Now, the fact that you're looking on the other side of the parking lot is a little different.
You're just looking in the back.
Typically, if you were looking out down the road. And the reason is because if you get a grant for number 2 Main Street, you can't use that money to build someplace else.
So the
It's
grant
site-specific.
application is based upon a determination of renovation or new?
There's a variety of different things that you need to determine. But I think what's confusing is that there's 2 different grants that are going on here. You have a planning grant that has its own set of rules, and then you have a construction grant application that the town would like to apply for in January.
So
And
the
that's different
the construction grant requires either A, a renovation, or B, a new building? Or one of, or just a renovation? It's not both, it's one or the
steps.
other?
One or the other.
Okay, so there's no
It's like
need,
MSBA. So
there's no need to make a
you're building a new
determination
school,
to
you're renovating
say
an old school.
what site they want. They
No,
need
but
to-
we can say the following, understanding that site selection will occur between now and January, specific determination, I move that the board act to do whatever we have within our powers to clear up any title issues or availability issues for the sites being considered on this
For
property.
the sites,
town.
to include the Morgan, all of them?
Well,
Because now they have to get it down,
Yeah,
they
I
need to
mean-
make a determination of
all
what
the
that site
sites,
is.
sure, I mean, I think you might want to leave that one off because that's a whole different ball of wax, it's different than what research Tom's done.
Oh, so based on what
The
the
four,
research?
I mean,
So
I have in
this-
mind the
this
4
general
here.
area?
Yes.
Okay.
4 that are under the 4 that the council has done is deed research on.
But again, for my clarification,
Yes.
we can make that motion, I got no issue with that, voting on that. The building grant application is for one location, either renovation or new building. So it's tasked for you, someone was asking, what do we need to do? The library trustees need to ask the town, do you want to renovate or do you want to build? And that has to come back to us to say, this is what we did, and the town said this. So I got no issue making that determination. There was a lot of confusion, we need 2, we don't need 2. It's either a renovation or a new building, and that's how it has to be presented to the town.
Yes.
And I will say, one of the things you brought up, Jenna, was Facebook. I'm not gonna govern based
No,
on social
not-
media, so. you
I
can
didn't
have-
hear what you said?
I'm not gonna govern based on social media, so you can have a million
Govern.
people.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said. Yep.
So
So can I have a second on my motion, just so we, I mean, it's just a, okay, fine.
So moving second, all those in favor say aye.
All right, we got something voted on.
So you need, I mean, you need to go out and find out renovation or new, that's the question.
And if we choose the site?
There is no, I mean, really, we just told you that we would support any in that map we saw. So you need to figure
Well,
out
no,
the
we didn't
town.
exactly. We said we would make it easy to do this.
Well, again, you need to clear that up anyways. We need to clear that up.
Yeah.
But the question to the townspeople are, do you want to renovate or do you want
Right.
to build new?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I
I
echo
want
what
to
you say,
continue
Jim.
to say that because there was a lot of confusion in this process.
There should be a lot more selling, kind of
lot of
outside of your
confusion.
natural audience. I think that's probably where it has to happen. And then, at the end of the day, you have reserved your right to advocate whichever one you want. I mean, it'd be great to get everybody on the same page. That's probably where we should go. But, that's entirely your,
Our goal is to get everyone on the same page, we just need the roadblocks removed so that we can keep moving forward with
This will help
getting
that.
everyone
Okay,
on the
this
same
will
page.
help.
So, thank you.
Right.
And we will require a similar motion from the school committee at some point because of the questions on
Care and custody.
Cleaning up.
care and custody, yes.
Well, no, I mean.
So let me ask you this, Tom, about the story for another day, never mind.
I mean, on
Okay.
behalf of the school committee, we're prepared to vote however necessary to clean up all of the issues there, because I think that makes sense to do relative to the 2 sites that are currently proposed that are relative to the school thing. If you're gonna propose using the tennis courts, we have to have a replacement proposed and costed into the thing there,
Right.
and the impact to the schools.
Yes.
And then if it's the slope site, I think it's currently an unused piece of property, we could probably clear that easier
It's not yours to clear though, right?
Yes, it is. Well, no.
They'll change it for a town hall.
We had no grown-up Walden list there, we had the fights.
I know.
Just to respond, we fully understand if we take the tennis court site, we need to replace it.
All right, okay, guys, we need to wrap this up. The final frontier on all this is financing and adding up all the numbers, and that's where we will head next.
Can I add one last, the library trustees have started a fundraising committee, and we are going to work to fundraise to defer as much of the cost as we can from the.
Good.
Very good.
It's always appreciated.
Which we will be interested in learning about. Okay, thank you very much. Good
Your
discussion.
motion so that I make sure I got it correctly.
All right, we are.
I suggest we do this, and we can't do goals
Between now and January.
Hear that? Joe saying, don't do both tonight.
The Board of Selectmen
What's that? No.
obstacles to the library, illegal or otherwise, to the library, designating any of the sites on this.
Now we're gonna
Okay,
That's where we're gonna go next.
so,
However you want.
okay, I got it, okay. It'll be very close.
Jen, did you go to last night here?
I'm gonna have a beer by the time we're done.
Clear them out, Jim. Clear them out.
All right, guys, let's, we gotta move on. It's very late. We still have a lot to get through. Thank you. All right. So I saw Mr. Field somewhere. He's not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief King
Hey,
we
Bob.
lost.
Oh, geez, sir.
Oh, good. Okay, good. And Mr. Field.
Let's do the chief.
All right. All right, Chief.
Madam
You're
Chair.
gonna skip
Yes.
goal setting. I hate to say it, but
I know, and what should be our first priority
I know.
keeps getting our last, I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying collectively, we're ending up in the same place.
and maybe we can pick another off-cycle night just to do goals.
Yeah,
Go
or,
back to
you know.
this.
What's today was gonna be.
Yeah, that was,
No.
you're right. When you put other stuff on, it just eats up the.
Exactly.
We should do it over beers at 4 o'clock at the pub.
So another time when all 5 of you are available is when?
Yeah, that's another.
In August?
No, I'm around. Look, I mean,
Well, I mean,
last week, I mean, both Melissa and I came back from vacations to be here, right? I mean, you know, this is a kind of a, you know.
I'm 3 hours away, I ain't coming back.
What about the 22nd or the
That's the trick.
29th?
Paul, we gotta go far, far away.
I'm gone 25 through Labor Day.
Okay, so
In any event, we're not doing it tonight.
No.
No.
But what about this week?
I can do it this week.
It's possible, actually.
Thursday?
Wednesday?
A little quick for you to come up with an excuse. Jeff.
We don't have time to post for Wednesday.
Thursday? No, Thursday.
Thursday's the earliest. Well,
Yeah.
Tomorrow's Tuesday.
if we got the town clerk and posted right now, you could meet at 9 o'clock.
No, thanks.
On
Okay.
Wednesday.
Like 24 hours?
48 hours.
48.
Yeah.
But I can't do, I have hockey things I gotta go to this
On
week.
Thursday? Okay.
All right, so what are we looking at?
We don't know.
No football.
Well, we don't
You say
know.
Thursday? You can't do Thursday, Joe?
Next. And you're on vacation next week.
I'm
Jen's
leaving
away.
Thursday night.
You're away.
Away next week.
Next week.
You're away
Yeah.
next week. The week of the 15th.
Do it. I'll be in Houston. You can do it that week, so,
Houston. Oh, that's right, that's the Al
with Al
Gore.
Gore.
When do you need to know by
He's
Thursday?
inventing the new internet.
When do you have to post for? I can find out tomorrow what,
By tomorrow. I'd have to post by tomorrow, at
48 hours
3
prior to the
o'clock for when the town clerk's office
Okay.
closes.
I could just check up my schedule, maybe I could do 7:30 or 8, but I don't think I can do before that.
On Thursday?
Yeah. But I have to find,
Yeah, right.
I have to find the schedule.
Anyone else Thursday?
I can
Everyone's
delay
busy?
my vacation. These guys came back, I will delay mine.
Okay, so Thursday, okay.
Well, it's a maybe.
Say Thursday at 7:30?
What happens in
Can't do earlier than that, Joe?
I know, Ron.
Pain in the ass.
You're able? All right, I'll make it work.
Yeah. So Joe, you'll let us know tomorrow?
Yes.
I don't really
Right
like
away.
that kid anyway.
I'll probably let Keith know tonight.
Tonight, okay. All right, so let's
this thing
shoot
on?
for that.
We have 4 others, don't worry about it.
Okay, so Thursday.
Okay. Chief, quick question. How long do you think you need for the police
Not long,
regulation?
he doesn't
He
need,
doesn't need anything.
It's only if you have questions.
Yeah.
It's a procedural,
We had all that time to ask him questions.
All right.
But I would appreciate if you give us a 2-minute, summary.
Rundown.
give us your thumbnail. yeah.
Well, first question I want to ask you, do you want them in groups of 5, do you want them in groups of 2, is this too many to give you at once?
6.5.
You're gonna be getting more.
Five.
in
I'd
the-
rather have them, I'd rather have them small things, see,
Okay.
instead of reading a book.
Can I make a suggestion? If they're pretty straightforward and easily stated, let's
The 2 or
have
3
5
page-
be the high water
The
mark.
2 or 3 page ones, I can send you multiples. Some of them are
Do
gonna
it by
be.
weight, if it's like a quarter of a pound.
Okay,
But if they're gonna be kind of convoluted and it's a total change, then maybe just a couple.
great.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's
Sure.
a good.
Are you gonna be offended if I step out for a minute? No? Okay.
There's no breaks.
I don't hurt anybody's feelings.
We are talking about organized crime.
Basically, as I explained, we're still progressing through accreditation. These are more policies. Some of them are changes from policies that were issued by Tom O'Day back in, that far back. Obviously, the first one you see is the victim witness assistance one. Anything in the meat of the policy that you see is highlighted or has a number next to it, that's actually a standard for accreditation. That's why it's really posted out there, so when the assessor goes through, they can just look and see, okay, that's the wording, that matches what the standard says it should, and they move on from there. So basically, it's just a continuation of what we've been doing, we're going through the rest of the policies. Some of the, obviously, a bunch of the, prior policies, there's standards in there that you guys don't have to review because the prior boards have already done these policies. You'll only be seeing the new set of policies that's coming out for anything we don't have covered or isn't covered under a current policy. These are 5 of the most current that we're 85% through the mandatory standards right now. And then we have to get into the non-mandatory standards, which we have to do 80% of to get through. So we're moving right along. As I said, I want to be on track for next spring. Nothing in here, just so the board also knows too, my intention is to, and I've talked to Mr. Bergman about it, so the board knows we're actually gonna post our entire policy book right online, right on the webpage. So, unless there's, there's 1 or 2 policies that might contain information that those won't be out there, but basically, they're all public, 99.9% of them are public information, so. Make it even easier, we've complied several times this year with policy requests. That way I can also send it right to the website. Look on the website, every policy we have is there.
I have a procedural question, if I may, Madam Chair. I thought we were taking these policies in as a entity, and if no one had any issues, 30 days from that receive,
They took
took
effect.
So
and in
why are we
fact,
doing this? Why did we revert back?
well, in fact, what the procedure involved was an executive session where you didn't discuss them in public anymore. So the chief is making them public. Well, I guess the reason why it's on now is because if you decided that you had a problem with them, this was the only meeting that's occurring before the end of the 30 days. So, and since none of you had problems with them, it seemed, and there was nothing to hide, and it seemed more, the procedure is to bring them here. If you don't want to see them, if you don't want them on your agendas,
I mean, it's public
then you don't.
information anyway.
Right. I think one of the reasons this happened this way this time is because of the summer season. And if we didn't get them scheduled for now, they would never have made a meeting before the 30 days expired. So Mr. Bergman asked me, and I said, well, put them on. I hadn't heard back from anyone with a problem yet, but if we didn't do them tonight, chances we wouldn't have another meeting until the 22nd, the 30 days would have expired. So if there are any problems, it would have caused technically an issue.
But I thought it was my understanding that how we actually set it up was that if someone on the board had a problem, they would go to you and then bring it back. And if none of us had a problem with it, we didn't even have to go through this procedure.
That's fine. Yeah, okay.
If that was the direction, I misled, I missed them, but anyway,
We can do that too.
It was a previous board.
Oh, okay.
So we did it, and the last time we did it, there was instantly a question, so it got scheduled for
I got
an
3
agenda.
quick questions,
the way it
but
is.
they're real quick ones.
So in that case, we would have him come before us and you ask your questions. If there were no other questions, we'd just say, okay,
Right.
it's policy, let it go, put it on the website.
And normally what we've tried to do in the past, if there were any prior questions, if I could or felt, in discussion back and forth, we have made changes to the policy before and it was worked out and it never actually ever came forward again.
Is the highlighted yellow stuff, are those the changes? Because they really don't, no, they didn't look like they did.
That strictly is the wording that's needed for the standard.
Gotcha.
And so
Okay.
when the assessor goes through, that's why you'll see a highlighted section at the very end.
yeah.
You'll also see a number, because that's the standard.
All right, that's number 1. Number 2, Patrol Association, they're fine with this? No impact on them, bargaining unit?
Not so far.
But- and they've had a chance to review.
There might be some coming up, as I had, on possibilities of employee evaluations, things of that nature. But so far, we haven't had any, they've worked right along with them. Anytime we've had one in the past that has affected them, we obviously send that off to them if we think it's a change of work conditions. But so far, we haven't had that issue.
And what in here is any significant, if there is anything, change in policy that would affect the general public if they interact with the department?
In any of these, really nothing. What it does is really clarifies under, I would say to you, under, hazardous materials response, it just solidifies what the officer's roles are. I would say the biggest one here that is most important to the public would be the victim witness assistance, things like that, ensuring that the officers very much explain to any victim or any witness what the whole process is, what their rights are, what they can do.
So the
and
department's
what-
assuming a role to explain what's available to them
Oh, absolutely,
under policy?
absolutely, that's under policy, and that's, what we should do.
Good. Thank you.
I'm just of the opinion that if there's nothing that impacts the collective bargaining in the union, and, I mean, between the chief and the professionals that have advised the chief on what changes to make, I'm good.
And I also will notify you when I'm sending them to you, hey, this is a big change, or this might get punched back by the union for, having to negotiate or something like that. So I'll know ahead and I'll try and call attention to it to you.
Or if you get any interesting feedback from posting it online and from the public.
Oh, absolutely.
Trust your judgment on that.
Any other thoughts and questions? Ready for a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, subsection 97A, to approve the following regulations for the Littleton Police Department as submitted by Chief of Police Matthew King on July 20, 2016. 3.06, criminal intelligence. 4.05, drugs, organized crime, and vice. 8.03, hazardous materials response. 16.02, police media relations. And 22.01, victim witness assistance.
Second.
So moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good, thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks so much. Okay, now on to 4B. Thank you for your patience, but you're no stranger to spending a lot of time with us here, many hours, so I felt like it was just, like old days.
All that.
Yeah,
Extra bonding time.
yeah. So, Narcissus Road Tax Title Properties. All right.
We had the request, and we had we met with Matt, and back in May, the question was, how do we affect the desire that M&M Realty, is it M&M?
Yeah.
That would like to do, of acquiring 4 tax title parcels and then not developing them, basically. That's what they would like to do. 2 of the tax title parcels are in controlled by the tax title abutter lot sales program, and which restricts development. The other 2 are just general tax title where there's no restriction and arguably no ability to restrict them, or at least not to require in auctioning the regular tax title properties that they be restricted. So the question came, if that was the board's desire to say, would be all right to have the 4 auctioned so long as there was no additional dwelling unit as a result of it. How do we do that? So then the question went to council, and I'll let Tom
Okay.
describe.
All right, so, and I have 4 copies of this, but if possible, can we put, Matt, you two?
Yes, I will. Yep, I will.
So this is a visual explanation.
Is that this one, Tom? U12?
12, yeah.
It won't zoom.
Move your head closer.
Want my glasses?
Yeah, I'm gonna,
I know them well if you.
I'm gonna put up a slightly different one, but catches the same.
I might use Jim's crayon and,
My grandson came over this weekend, he took all my.
This is the slide that we had at town meeting when we were describing the 2 lots, 113 and 114, that are the subject of the tax title abutter program.
Which were approved at.
Which were approved at town meeting. They are under 5,000 square feet, so they do qualify. It's these other lots, 111 and 115, which now are being added to the mix. Those are both above the threshold for being allowed to be included in that abutter program.
I have a question, Mr. Bergman. 111 went out to auction prior, and no one bid on it. Is it still out there?
That was just available just to bid as a...
Straightforward auction. That was approved at town meeting and went out for auction.
It wasn't approved at town meeting.
Didn't 111 go out?
Went out to bid.
expired.
And expired.
Nobody did.
It expired?
Nobody did.
When did that come?
Okay, that was my question. Does it expire? Which is okay.
Went out to, did it go out to bid?
On,
How long ago?
May.
Yeah, it was a few months ago.
Same time university did.
Really? I don't remember that at all.
Why were you interested?
No, I just don't wanna see lots sold that can be built on. We have enough housing going on, and we're gonna be under our 20%, 10%, I'm sorry. So I'm not opposed to taking tax titles off, so long as we're not getting more houses and you're not building a monster
No.
building.
111 went out to auction. The owner of 108 and 110 sent a letter to the board asking for 111 because she needed extra space for her septic system.
Okay.
The board granted that request and put it out to auction. She, however, didn't bid once Matt said he was interested in that parcel. She didn't want to bid against Matt. So she backed off, she didn't put a bid in. Matt, hearing that, didn't put a bid in, so it went unsold.
I didn't want to impact Evelyn, and that's why 2 weeks ago I went to Donald's with my wife and said, Evelyn, I'll buy it and give it to you. I'll give you the deed restriction, I'll give you a fill easement, I'll give you whatever you need. She can't afford to buy it and put the septic in. So, I mean, that's how this, and working with the neighbors, we have no intention of building more houses. We already have one approved.
How does it go forward from here? How
But
do we?
we're gonna discuss
we
it.
can, right? Or
Can we
talk
put it
about
out
it.
to a
That's
bid
that's what
or
town
sealed
council's
bid?
gonna
That's why we're
explain
here
in about
tonight.
30 seconds.
Right now.
You're on. And go. Okay. So, the town currently acquired by foreclosure lots 111, 113, 114, and 115. Of note, 113 and 114, as Keith explained, have already been to town meeting and have been designated for your abutters lot sales program. The abutters lot sales program doesn't sell to the highest bidder. It requires that people apply to you for those lots. The price is set by, it's kind of like dollar a square foot. Okay, so what you do is you gather up applications and see how people are going to use it and rank them and then choose the winning bidder that way, or it can be split amongst a number of neighbors. There's a number of conditions that go with the abutters lot program. Can't be used for new lots, needs to be combined with an abutting lot. And if you look, in this case, so 123, 124, 111, or 115, if they weren't owned by us, could bid, but no one else could really bid. You're not allowed to bid if you live across the street. Okay, so that's the abutters lot program, and so you need to dispose of those two lots under the program, as the rules are currently written, or you would need to amend the rules to allow for something different to happen. One of the rules is that you can't sell it to an abutting property if there is no structure on that property. Okay, so now we've got these guys, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are going to acquire 123 and 124.
We have them under purchase sales and
Okay.
ready to go.
Yep.
And you're gonna build a single house on those two lots.
We have a septic permit for 123 and 124, yeah.
Okay, and you would like to
So you have
add,
two houses.
No,
No, one
lot.
house.
One house.
One house.
We have a septic permit.
Just said septic permit. for
Yeah,
two
no.
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
123,
Collectively.
124.
and you guys would like to
Combined as-
acquire 111, 113, 114, and 115 to add to that,
Square footage.
right, but it'll still be one
One.
contained lot for one
Correct.
house, okay.
Yes.
So my understanding was that was this board's goal as well. Seemed like a good plan, how do we do it? Okay, here's the problem, so for 113 and 114, technically right now, we can't sell to them, but you could amend the rules to allow you to sell to them, okay? The problem is with 111 and 115, those are foreclosure lots. So you need to go through a specific foreclosure process, which really is putting it out to bid, highest bidder wins, you're allowed to set minimum bids, you're allowed to set terms of sale, and please jump in if I'm going astray. The question is, can this board restrict those lots in any way to say, come bid on it, but we're not going to allow you to build on them? I think the answer to that is no, you can't. I think that's beyond the authority of the statute that allows you to sell these by foreclosure. And to take a step back, the idea behind the statute is if we acquire a lot by foreclosure, we might want to get it right back out there. We don't want to be holding tight. We want to get it out so we're getting taxes on it. So they've established a process to put these out to bid, but the process is strict. It doesn't allow a lot of flexibility. So you put it out there, if someone is the winning bidder, they're the winning bidder, and you've got to give it to them.
Do we still have the right to refuse all bids at that point?
Yes.
I don't think you do. I think if you set a minimum bid, you have
They
to
meet the
live with the
criteria of the
minimum
auction.
bid. Right.
So why would we want to do that? Because we have to do a minimum bid, or, because if that's the only thing that keeps us from being able to refuse, the outcome that we may not like.
Right, but again, so this is the statutory that allows you to acquire and get them right back out there. If you want more control over that lot, in my opinion, you need to go to town meeting and have town meeting put the control on that lot. So for instance, here's my concern with these guys. So assuming they're gonna win the bid and they're gonna do what they say, it's all gonna be great, and that's not the problem. The problem is, what if they are not the high bid on these two lots? Say it's John Doe, and we say, no, John Doe, we're pulling it back. You're not the buyer we want. We don't care that you're the high bidder, we're pulling it back, we're not gonna sell it to you. If John Doe takes us to court and says this property was put up for auction under a particular statute, which I have in the letter, I don't have it top of my.
Even following that statute,
Yeah.
could we not put a deed restriction on it that, would be, make it less attractive to?
Town meeting can put a
All
deed
right, so we
restriction
have to
on
go
it.
through that first.
But this board can't. You only have the authority to put it back out. So the concern is, I have no concern if these guys are the winners and they do what they say they're gonna do. My concern is they're not the winning bidder, and Jim, what you're trying to avoid could happen. These are technically two legal building lots, 111 and 115. So you could be auctioning off two building lots and get two structures there. That's what I cannot prevent under the current process, if these guys are not the winning bidder.
I can though, and I can tell you how. If you amend your rules on 113 and 114 to allow us to, I'll acquire, because we have now the permit for 123 and 124. If you amend your rules to allow an abutter to buy it without a structure on there, 113 and 114, it's impossible
absolutely on 115 to fit a house in a septic system, and Mr. Knox will tell you, you cannot fit a house in a septic on 6,000 square feet. It's impossible. All right. And I will not give a fill easement to him for a wall.
Is this just too obvious a solution, or couldn't we just do one lot, have an auction on that?
No, because they're not, no, because the town meeting hasn't joined them. If you want to auction them off as a single lot, I think you need to go to town meeting and say.
No, I'm talking two separate lots, right? Have an auction.
Paul said,
But
do an
one-
auction for 113.
Yeah, just do 113.
But there's two
And then a
problems
month
with
later,
that.
do 114.
Well, 113 and 114 are a butter's lot. So what you're doing there is you're accepting applications to see who is the most worthy to receive those, because they're, right?
There's
so-
already restrictions in there.
We
not
can
to
do
build.
that.
Yeah.
Could you?
You can't do that.
No,
We can do
you can't
that, yeah.
113 and 114 are not the
By
problem.
itself.
Right.
111 and
111 and
115 are
They
the
can't be
problem.
built on by themselves.
But why can't you just auction 115 off by itself at first and see if anybody bids on it? And
That's
there's
what I'm
only one
saying.
person
Just
do
doing
it.
one at a time, 111 and 115, separate auctions.
Here's,
Right, so you could do 111 alone, right? You don't
Yes.
need to do them, so we put 111 out there, we set our minimum bid, they're the winning bidder.
Or they're not, either way,
Wherever-
worst scenario
wherever it is.
is one lot.
Yeah, but
That's our
one
exposure.
house.
But
Right,
you-
one house.
Right, but
Yeah,
you,
we don't, that's.
One
you have to do
buildable.
it, you have to
That's
do
why I'm
it,
opposed
Mr.
to it.
Glavy, you have to do it a little bit differently, just to ensure that happens. If you amend your rules on the small lot
Butters.
abutters, the only abutter to that is us. So if you wiped out 113 and 114, which is 6,000 square feet, which separates the two lots, they'll never be able to be joined, and they would never fit or accommodate a house and a septic system.
And would we be able to put a restriction on that for a fill easement or something like that?
No.
no.
No, without a town meeting.
But
Then why don't
I
you
can
just-
tell you that
Try it.
a contractor has come to my office, and I told this to Matt, looking to purchase 126, and he was interested in 111.
So,
What they can do with it, I don't know, but 126 is privately owned, and if they purchased 111,
was that me?
No, is that on Oak? Is 126 on Oak?
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Name and address.
Cammy Bean, I'm on Oak Road, so I'm familiar with this.
yeah, we've been
Yeah.
talking with Cam.
I'll share my 2 cents. I mean, I
You
want
should.
you guys to, I mean, I
Yeah.
think, is it okay for me to talk now? I'm sorry, you were sharing about.
Yeah,
No,
please,
that's
ask
all right.
the,
126 is.
ask the chair.
I'm sorry. Cammy being 27 Oak Road, so I live across this. So they were in front of the planning board, and the neighborhood was very vocal about not wanting the plans that they had approved for 2 lots on, what was it?
They would be
123.
123 and 124.
So 123 and 124, because it would have been like a 5-foot-high septic structure on this road. So the neighborhood was pretty opposed to that. We all accept that there could be a house there, and if
Yep.
you guys build one house on that lot, we will be thrilled, right? So we're in favor, I think the neighborhood, I'm speaking for my whole street, but I think the neighborhood would be in favor of that. 126 is for sale now,
I know,
for $100,000.
they're never gonna get it.
And they're never gonna get it. It's very wet land back there, the
Never
whole
gonna
street,
perk.
it's crazy. So I think you would have a neighborhood that would be in support of whatever plan you can put together, because we were not in favor of what was there before, because it would have gone against the feel of the neighborhood. So that's the neighborhood point of view.
back, if I may.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Back to what Tom was saying, cleanest, easiest way, let's get the town meeting, let them approve us to sell 115, 111, get it out to auction with the deed restriction, done.
I would put all
We'll be
four,
all 4
gone.
of them.
Mr. Carr will be gone.
Well,
I'd put all
Well,
4
can we just do-
together
can we
and
just
deed
do-
restricted how you want it.
Okay.
115 right now, or put it out for a bid. How long is the bid process and what's it entail? For if you wanted to sell 115
Well,
singly,
we want to
right
take
by
care,
itself.
the thing is, Mike, we want to take care of. if we're
I
gonna- if
understand
we're gonna
what you're
deal with
doing,
it,
and I
let's-
really appreciate what you're
let's-
doing.
Let's just deal with it and let's get it done and over with. and-
You
and
couldn't get it all
move on.
solved at one town
I
meeting.
mean, we're gonna be building the one house on,
Matt,
I just know, but I'm not-
It is what it is, and you gotta understand, what we're trying to do is trying to do what's best for the town.
Yep.
With all your good intention, and I hear a lot of it coming out to help your neighbors and help everything else, what's best for the town in my eyes is to deal with the 4 lots, get it through town meeting, put it up for auction with the deed restriction that town council came up with, and if you're interested, God bless you. If you're not, and somebody else that owns 110.
26.
110, no, 110, if 110 wants to buy it.
She doesn't have any money.
I'm
That's why
just saying, I'm
there
just
you go.
saying, I'm just
Helps
saying,
your case.
Matt. I'm just saying, so, that's all. We wanna clean this up, we wanna get this done. I think the best and cleanest way, in my opinion, is to do what town council did, combine the 4, get the town meeting, let the town say, the neighborhood can speak up and say, we love this idea, and get it off the tax rolls.
And put a restriction on it.
And put a restriction on it,
And
yeah.
you could, I mean, you can restrict it so that the successful bidder will abut this lot. So
Sure.
you're not opening it up to anyone, they have to be an
There you
abutter
go.
to the,
So, I
so it's
mean-
kind of modified.
We want to do the right thing. I mean, you've talked about helping your neighbors. We've heard from the neighborhood. In my eyes, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's just, you know, wait.
I understand it, but I would like to just throw out another scenario. Yep.
So, Jimmy, I agree with you 100%. I want to do what's best for the town, I want to do what's best for the neighborhood. But I think that kind of doing a hybrid here, like what Michael was saying was, if we put 115 out there, we kind of ensure that,
don't, though.
well, we're kind of locking up other opportunities for people to bid on this. Is
You know
that,
what,
if we put one,
Jim, let me speak.
I think you could do it
Hold on one
even
second.
easier.
If we put 115 out, what would the time frame be if we put that back out to bid? It was out in May?
No, 111 was, but 115 would be the safer one to do. But the safest thing to do would be just to amend your rules and split it. Amend your rules so the butter can buy these 2, and it will ensure that nobody builds on those other ones just by doing that.
And how can you assure that 126 doesn't buy that and build
I
it?
can't.
You can't do that.
I can't
Yeah,
do that.
you can't do that.
I can't.
But you just said,
He said 115.
I don't think I've perked all over up there, and I've built a lot of houses up in that area. That is not gonna perk.
It's a little wetter than,
yeah, I can't comment.
I mean, groundwater's,
Well,
What about with 111 though?
with 111,
you have a shot.
I think you do have a shot.
There you go.
I mean, all honesty, I think you got a shot.
Then that 100,000 becomes 150,000, because now they got a buildable lot.
Mr. Sanders, I want to hear your comment.
My point is that on 111 and 115, those are title properties, right?
The what?
Their tax title.
That's
Tax title properties.
Yeah.
Well, if the town is going to sell those, put them out for bid, wouldn't the town have to declare that those properties are billable?
No.
No?
We offer
Well-
no
We just,
warranty.
as is,
Yeah.
they're as is.
Okay.
I
then-
Required them because
Bid on them.
the owner not
The
have that.
easiest way is to, what you're trying to do is to split those properties, and then you don't have a problem.
See, the policy issue that comes up, though, is that even though the town has acquired them because the property owner didn't pay their taxes.
Right.
And so now the town owns them. Now the question is, how does the town reuse them? There's no requirement that we get rid of tax title properties. The best use of some tax title properties is to remain in town ownership.
Right.
And so the question, and not develop them, the question here is, if the desire is to put them in private ownership, what the board is saying, they only want to do that if they can then still see no development on the parcel.
So, yeah, I'd like to try to do what we can to ensure that the neighborhood gets what they want. If you're able to help out Evelyn and we can ensure that that's gonna happen, if there's a path to do that as quickly as possible, to use your term, to get it back out there, that's the path that I'd like to try.
And if there's a path of doing exactly that without changing our adopted procedures, that's also the smartest way, even if it means a couple more months waiting. I think we just, who knows, we might even be open to litigation if we changed our rules to accommodate this.
I know if I was in a situation in town that, I'd come before you and say, hey, you know what, you did it for them, why not do it for me?
Right.
Well, it does open you up to town meeting voted on
Disparate
this, and
tr-
here were your
disparate treatment,
rules.
Yes.
So, I think, and that's why we engage town council to say, hey, this is what we want to do, we want to, get this property off of tax title, get it back on the tax rolls, and have a restriction on it, and I think, that's why we pay them to come up with these solutions.
I think that is the safest thing
Yeah.
for the town and for Matt, is wait till town meeting. And like I said, I had a contractor come in looking from 126, 111. There was a resident that came in and a butter who was interested in 115 to keep it the way it was.
Right, sure.
So people can,
People will assume-
potentially, somebody else besides Matt could be bidding.
This town is so hot right now for real estate, I don't need to preach
Right,
to you.
there's two parcels that
So-
are gonna bid on it.
So,
Be
I
somebody
mean,
that
are
just
two-
wants to acquire.
There's two, I didn't hear, is it,
Wait to
Potentially.
fit them all
It could,
together.
it could be,
it's probably before.
Yeah.
you know, it really could be.
Two houses there, actually, after, but, and that's potential, I mean, because we do have.
That's
a
what would
septic,
happen.
But.
when you
that's-
talk about,
Have that on there too.
Right.
it goes back and forth. I don't understand what you're talking about. How can it be two houses? That's-
It absolutely could be, say,
See, I can't, everyone wants to talk. I just,
no,
someone,
I'm talking.
But
Say, we have our permit for 123 and 124.
correct,
We're ready to go. And we're gonna build a house there.
right.
And then we're gonna move on to another addition, then we're going to Cooper. The builder or the person proposing to buy 126 could buy 126 and be a direct abutter to all four of those lots there, and now it becomes two houses instead of one.
The one that you're building plus one that they built.
Correct.
So I guess what.
But that defeats the whole purpose of what
Yeah,
we're
so
trying to do.
All I'm trying to say is, to do it the right way, I think we combine all four, as the town council said, and then, go ahead.
So if that were your concern, you could control the restriction to say it can only be sold to someone who has a structure or a permit to construct a structure. You could leave 126 out of the, remove them from being an eligible bidder
That wouldn't be,
if you wanted to.
That'd be a real lawsuit, wouldn't it?
I was gonna say, that's not a.
If they,
No,
if they don't have a
Affordable
permit.
action.
If there's a legitimate planning purpose, and I think the legitimate planning purpose is to limit the number of houses.
Yes, absolutely.
If that's your planning purpose, you can
Defensible.
accomplish that planning purpose in that way.
also to limit it, the other option is to auction 111 through 115 as non-buildable lots, period. End of story.
Well, and to restrict it so that they can't.
Well, you have to be able to put septics on it, or Evelyn's
Septic,
gonna be
not
messed up.
buildings. No, not structures.
No, but you could,
Septic system.
you
Well,
could even
it's
say
a
no
wall,
no
a
septic.
wall is a structure.
You could say no septic.
Dwelling.
You can control it how you want to control it.
A dwelling. A dwelling is fine, but you gotta,
Structure could be a shed.
a structure is a wall.
Yeah.
So no dwellings, 111 through 115, no dwellings.
Right, now, so, and to be clear, your abutters lot program allows people to construct an addition onto a butter's lot, but not a new structure.
But that still leaves, that terminology would still leave 126 in the mix.
Right, but I'm not assuming that, one big lot is not eligible for the abutters lot program. So my plan, or what I'm explaining is, this is its own little hybrid program that's gonna have its own set of rules that aren't applied elsewhere. This is its own
Does
deal.
not create a precedent elsewhere.
This is a one-off.
Right, it's not part of a program, it's a one-on
Yeah.
Done.
restriction of four together.
And
Nothing
it would be tied to 123 and 124 only?
Well, it would be tied to.
to an abutter.
It would
An
be tied
abutter
to an
with-
abutter.
It'd be tied to
with at least a building permit.
124 and 126.
Yeah,
So
and
could
126 would be
121?
another structure.
No, they don't have a building permit.
You could.
We
limit
don't have a
that.
building permit yet.
We don't have a building
We have
permit yet
septic.
either. We have our septic permit, and we're gonna apply for our building permit. Thank you.
121 has a house, could she bid on it?
Sure.
Could she bid on all four?
Sure.
Yeah, she could.
Yep.
So could 101, 110.
So if we're going to,
My question for you guys, you have the two lots now. You can fit a house and a septic.
Where else, yeah.
Yep, we have a,
So you didn't have to do anything, but when you do this, will this allow you to have a less high system or something?
it will
Yes.
it'll allow us not to have the retaining walls close to the lot lines. It'll allow us to spread the house out where it's not house and wall and on 10,000 square feet. It will increase
So it
the lot
benefits the
size.
neighborhood.
Would do that with just 113 and 114?
We
It
can do-
would, it would
we can
benefit
do-
us doing that with that too.
Yes.
So we could just,
yeah, well, he wants to try and help the neighbor too, I mean, that's.
I'm doing it,
Okay,
I
so we
mean,
could do that. We could buy 113, 114 now and then put 115 out for just bid and even, I mean, that would help out a lot too. I mean, you know.
I mean, this isn't all one-sided, us trying to do a great thing for a neighbor. There's, when you look at the lots on 123 and 124, we have a house and we have a wall. And the wall on one of the sections is over 4 feet tall,
4.5.
which needs to be a zoning board of appeals approval, which we're now designed a new septic system, which is eliminating that anyway, but we're going to be able to eliminate the wall. And the wall of 110 feet is equivalent to the cost of the lots. It's the same, it's a wash.
In order to do 113 and 114 now, you'd have to change your rules.
That's what I was saying.
We'd have to amend the
Right.
rules for a direct abutter.
For a direct abutter without a structure on it. And that would take care of it.
All right, but what do we want to do?
That would be less appealing for, instead of someone
Anybody
looking
else
at,
buying it?
No one
I
would
have a-
buy it.
Someone else has a lot and they look at that right there, they looked at, well, that's almost a half acre. That portion that you'd be selling off as one parcel. And it'd be
113,
hard not to
114.
look at it
If
as
you had
a
all four of them.
buildable lot as it is.
If you take the two middle ones out, and all it is a word change with the structure as a direct abutter.
That's,
Well, think it about it, think it over.
what's the language we'd have to change on that? If we,
You'd have to allow an abutter who does not have a structure to buy,
There's no structure on.
to participate in the abutter's lot program.
And we can do that?
I think you can. So from a legal perspective,
But
I think
again,
you
we're getting
can.
back to changing a regulation that was
Political
voted
perspective, I
on.
don't know if
Right,
there's.
changing a
I don't know what the-
regulation that was approved at town meeting. And if I find a lot somewhere in town that doesn't have a structure on it, and I see the abutters program, just like these lots, I'm gonna come to this board and say, you did it for them, why can't you do it for me?
Well, you could do it for them if it was the exact same circumstance. We have circumstances here that benefit the neighborhood, so I think you're probably doing the right thing.
That's subjective though, benefit the neighborhood. We agree that it does, but I'm not sure how that would hold up legally, I mean, right? I mean, it benefits the neighborhood.
I don't know how it does legally, I'm just trying to think, there's only gonna be one house built there, so it benefits the neighborhood that way. The septic system won't be as high or ugly, so it benefits the neighborhood that way. So if there's a way of getting that done, I mean, the next time would be a special circumstance again, because are you gonna be doing the exact same thing that the other people did?
What was so wrong about what Tom and Steve had suggested? I mean, which one was that?
And that way they
Town
can get
meeting?
two lots
Yeah.
off of tax title too, and we get some tax income for it.
What was the suggestion?
Just go to town
Go to
meeting
town
and
meeting with all
combine
four
them all.
lots and restrict it the way you want to restrict it.
Well,
they don't have a permit.
I have a problem with that because it opens up the door for, and no problem with 121. They live on Oak Road. They should have every opportunity that we do. But if 121 buys it, how does that benefit Evelyn? If 126 buys it, that's an abutter, he's gonna build a house and
Put a septic on the
put a
land. then we're
septic
gonna put
out
Evelyn's
there
septic.
and wipe that out. I mean, it just doesn't benefit, in my opinion, it doesn't benefit the goal that we were trying to do with the neighborhood. And and Evelyn. It just doesn't. I mean, I'm gonna come and go. I'm gonna build the house and, because my costs are the same either way.
You can only do so much. I mean, if 126 wants to buy it, they want to buy it.
Right.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I just don't think we could construct it in
You can't-
such a
you
way
can't-
that it's so
right.
obvious that it's just directed toward one person
You
and
can't do that.
nobody
And
else.
that's-
How
and
about
that's
if
why
I
you- and
purchase, how about if I purchase 123 and 124 this week and pay cash for them, and then I own the property, as opposed to, coming in and having to do a special deal with somebody else, Mr. Carr?
Well, that would only
Because
get
I
you-
don't own 123 and 124 yet, I have them under purchase and sales.
Yep.
I will go to Mr. Healy and give him his money and own the land, because I've satisfied my due diligence
Yeah, I get
with the
that.
permits. Now I own the property.
But that
And
still
it'd be
doesn't help
different
us out
than-
with town.
Well,
You know,
then, the
having
only
to
other
go
thing
town-
is that you get
town meeting.
114 and 113 in the direct abutters program.
I can start the house, and then I can be the direct abutter.
Right, so it's gonna require you, you gotta buy the land anyways,
I'm gonna buy the land.
right? So that's.
I mean, I
I
satisfied
don't think
my-
that's a give, that has to happen to
Right.
participate. Sure. And then you'll have to change the rules for the program to allow people who just have vacant land or a building lot to add to that vacant land or building lot. And you need to make the determination, is this a change for all time, or is this a one-time change?
But when you buy an adjacent lot, it becomes still, unless it's an acre, it's still only one parcel of land anyway, when it's,
So the way the rules work is it always needs to be merged in to the
Same day.
purchaser's land, so that there's no zoning grandfathering
Okay.
occurring.
Yeah, no checkerboarding.
Yeah.
So if we purchased all of it under M&M Realty Trust, the acreage is less than 40,000 square feet.
It all merges.
It all merges, and it solves all the deed issues by being bought under one name, one entity.
Right, well, the abutters lot program always requires merger.
Right.
And if we were to sell all 4 lots, we would require a merger
Right.
to occur. That would be one of the conditions that we'd put in there.
If they were to purchase the lot and pour a foundation and we're in the act of constructing the home, where does that put them as far as the abutter program?
Well, the abutter program calls for a structure, so I guess it comes down to how do you want to
How do you
define
define
structure?
structure?
Yeah.
A structure is a wall, 4 feet or greater.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the board, it's your rules.
But that's the Littleton zoning regs.
That's
their rules.
building.
That's,
Okay.
yeah, it's state.
I mean, one of the things you could do by going to town meeting, if this septic piece is an important piece, is you could
For 111.
break off an easement, not break off a piece of property, because that's gonna require too much work, but you could break off an easement, you could go to, 110, 126, you could go to anyone and say, does anyone need a septic easement? And we'll carve up easements so that you get what
that
you
would
need
work,
there.
and just kept the line at 126 straight back for an easement for 110, and then that would probably make it so it's legitimately gonna go to 124 and 123.
Mr. Carr, when's town meeting?
November 16.
November 16th.
16th.
So if you put an easement on 111 at the same lot line as 126, that would make it so that 126 couldn't probably use that as a part of their septic or structure to make their lot.
Oh, on this line right here, Michael?
We deed an easement between 111 and 110?
No, right here, this line.
But even straight back, just right here.
Yeah, I would say we don't want a house on 126.
So if
I mean, that's what we're trying to
Right.
protect here, and
Easement right here
and we're not
for
protecting it.
10.
You understand
over
that,
there,
right?
then
Yeah, I get it.
That would, I mean, and you know what?
It's not that it's, I honestly, I think it's kind of,
I mean, I think with town meeting's
It's not
approval, we
fair,
can
but
do pretty
I
much
don't think it's
whatever we
fair.
want with the land. It's, you know?
So why don't we have town council, Madam Chair, if I may, have town council draft at least a motion or something for town council, for town meeting, so we can now see try to vet it out, see what's going on, and let it rock from there. I mean, that's what I'd say.
And subsequent deed restriction language, or would
Yes.
that all be part of the motion?
That's a good question. Yeah, yeah, let me think about that, yeah.
So, I mean, you need to come through, get the process you came through with is okay. Now to advise the board as to
We
what.
need to see the details.
There you go.
Yep.
And I think I'd be good with that.
You can't.
I don't think it's, it's not right.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah.
Or the guy that tried to board you.
So,
Anyway.
so gentlemen,
Yes, sir.
what we're gonna do is, town council's gonna work on some type of motion for town meeting to address the needs of the neighborhood, some neighbors, and your needs too. So I think once he gets that drafted, we should be good to
And
go.
it's still gonna pass the smell test that the public gets to vote on it at town meeting, and then the public gets a chance to bid on it.
And we can vet it out to one of these meetings.
It is what it is.
Yeah, that's it, I mean, that's the best you can do. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
All right.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hope you
How's your
have an
fence?
entertaining evening.
It's amazing, thank you.
It's gotta be fair.
That's beautiful.
All right.
You're not putting that pool on your back deck, are you?
Yeah, right. Thing would break.
See you guys
See
later.
you later.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, minutes.
We'll look for it, we'll hope for the best.
All right, Madam Chair, we have the minutes for July 11th, July 18th, and July 25th. Members, any changes and modifications?
Let them all, and they go,
If you've got,
So I would make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve its minutes for Monday, July 11th, 2016, Monday, July 18th, 2016, and Monday, July 25th, 2016.
Been moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Look for another motion.
as soon as you adjourn, there's still documents that we have to have you sign.
Second.
On your way
All
out.
right, make a motion to adjourn?
Did that one happen? And
Jack made it.
it's been moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great.
Motion adjourned.
Motion adjourned.